Hello everyone, I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. The road stretched out like a forgotten ribbon through the barren countryside, swallowed gradually by a thick, unyielding fog. It was as if the night itself had exhaled a heavy breath, wrapping the world in a damp, silvery shroud. Marcus Reed squinted through the windshield of his aging sedan, the beam of his headlights scarcely parting the murk. Every curve of the road, every gnarled tree limb overhead, was hidden in an ambiguous twilight that made reality seem distorted and uncertain. Marcus had driven for hours, following vague directions and rumors whispered in the dead of night. Whispers of a town where people disappeared into the mist without a trace. His own past, marred by a case that had shaken his belief in the natural order, propelled him onward. Once a respected detective, now a man burdened by memories and haunted by unanswered questions, he had traded the certainties of the police force for the murkier realm of the paranormal. Tonight, he felt, was destined to test the boundaries of both worlds. As he neared the town, the landscape shifted. The scattered, forlorn cottages gave way to a cluster of weathered buildings huddled around a narrow, cobblestone square. A single street lamp flickered feebly at the entrance to what appeared to be an old inn, the kind of establishment that might once have offered respite to weary travelers, but now stood as a sentinel over secrets too dark to be revealed. Marcus parked his car by the curb and stepped out, the damp air clinging to his coat and seeping into his bones. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft, insistent patter of rain that had begun to fall. As he pulled the collar of his jacket higher, he couldn't shake the sensation of unseen eyes tracking his every move. The fog seemed to pulse with life, undulating around the edges of his vision. It was both beautiful and ominous, a living, breathing entity that blurred the line between the tangible and the spectral. He made his way toward the inn, its faded sign reading "The Elder's Rest" in ornate, time-worn letters. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of damp wood and old secrets. A narrow staircase creaked underfoot, and the floorboards whispered stories of decades past. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with tired eyes and a voice that trembled like a brittle leaf in the wind, greeted him at the counter. "Evening, stranger," the man said, his gaze darting nervously toward the window where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. Not many come this way anymore. Marcus nodded politely, his eyes scanning the dimly lit room. "I'm looking for a room for the night, and perhaps a little information, if you wouldn't mind." The innkeeper hesitated, as though weighing the risks of speaking aloud what he knew. "Information, sir? About the fog, perhaps? Folks say it's not just a weather phenomenon." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial murmur. "Some believe it's a curse, a remnant of tragedies long buried in these parts." Marcus leaned forward, interest piqued. "Tragedies? Disappearances?" he asked softly, his tone gentle yet insistent. The innkeeper's eyes widened, and he glanced over his shoulder before replying in a hushed tone. Many have vanished in this mist. Last month, a young woman from the next village was seen walking into the fog, and that was the last anyone saw of her. There's talk that the fog, it calls out for lost souls. But please, if you choose to dig too deep, you might not like what you find." A chill ran down Marcus's spine, though he wasn't entirely surprised by the ominous warning. Over the years, he had encountered enough inexplicable phenomena to know that legends often held shards of truth. "I appreciate your warning," he said, offering a small, understanding smile. "I've seen enough darkness to know that sometimes the shadows hold the answers we're too afraid to seek." After a brief nod, the innkeeper handed him a heavy brass key. "Room 3 upstairs, and please mind the stairs. They're as old as the stories that haunt this place." With a polite "thank you," Marcus ascended the narrow staircase. each step echoing in the stillness. In the solitude of his modest room, he set his bag down and pulled out a worn leather journal, the repository of his investigations and personal reflections. As he jotted down notes about the journey that had led him here, the soft scratching of his pen was the only sound breaking the oppressive quiet. The window offered a view of the town shrouded in perpetual twilight. Beyond the faint glow of street lamps, the fog seemed to pulse with an almost hypnotic rhythm. It was as if the very essence of the town was bound to this mist, a spectral veil hiding truths too terrible to confront in the light of day. Marcus's thoughts drifted back to a case from his past, a series of disappearances that had defied logical explanation. That case had shattered his faith in the conventional method of law enforcement and had nudged him into the murky realm of the unexplained. He recalled the night vividly, the neighbor's desperate cry in the dead of night, the frantic calls of those left behind, and then the sudden disappearance of a beloved community member without any trace. The investigation had yielded nothing but dead ends and whispers of curses and spectral abductions. Since then, Marcus had devoted himself to understanding the forces that lurked at the boundaries of human comprehension. Now, here he was again, standing on the threshold of a new mystery. The town, in its ominous fog, offered a mirror to his own haunted past. Could it be that the darkness he chased was more than just a series of coincidences? Was there something inherently malevolent about this mist? Something that feasted on the sorrow and loss of those unfortunate enough to cross its path? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, soft knock on the door. Startled, Marcus set his pen aside and moved to answer it. Opening the door, he found a young woman with wide, anxious eyes standing on the threshold. Her clothes were damp from the rain, and her hair clung to her face like strands of midnight. Are you here about the disappearances?" She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't help but overhear some of the talk downstairs. My name is Lena. I lost someone. My brother went missing in the fog last week, and now I'm desperate for answers." Marcus's gaze softened with empathy. He gestured for her to step inside. "Please come in, Lena. We'll talk. I understand all too well what it feels like to search for someone in the shadows of uncertainty." As they sat together in the quiet of the room, Lena recounted her harrowing tale. Her brother, a gentle soul with dreams and laughter, had disappeared without a trace on a night much like this one. Every detail was imbued with raw emotion, an uncanny sense of foreboding, a sudden chill that no fire could dispel, and an inexplicable pull toward the fog, as if it were calling him home. Marcus listened intently, his mind piecing together fragments of past cases, legends, and the stark, undeniable horror of loss. "The fog isn't just mist," Lena insisted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's like it's alive. I felt it around him, like a cold hand reaching out. And every time I look out the window, I swear I see him wandering somewhere in it." Marcus leaned back, his mind racing through the possibilities. "There are many stories about such phenomena," he began, choosing his words with care. "Sometimes the natural world hides secrets behind a veil of mystery. Other times, these secrets are born of ancient curses and tragedies that refuse to fade away. I've encountered cases before where the explanation lay somewhere between the tangible and the spectral." Lena's voice trembled as she asked, "Do you believe there's something supernatural at work here?" He paused, considering the gravity of her question. "I don't know," he admitted, "but what I do know is that fear often finds its roots in the unknown. And if there's even a sliver of truth to these legends, then we owe it to those who've been lost to uncover it." Outside, the fog thickened as though drawn by their conversation. The sound of rain grew louder, tapping a steady, ominous beat against the window pane. Marcus felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath his feet. The air grew colder, and for a moment, the boundaries between the present and a forgotten past blurred. Later that night, as Marcus lay in the narrow bed of his room, sleep proved elusive. The whispers of the past mingled with the rustling of the wind, and every creak of the old building set his nerves on edge. He stared at the ceiling, the dim light from the hallway seeping under the door, and pondered the nature of the fog. Was it merely a meteorological oddity, or did it harbor an ancient, malevolent will? In the silence, a faint sound reached his ears, a murmur that could have been mistaken for the wind, but carried a rhythmic, almost deliberate cadence. It was as if the fog was not content to be a silent witness, but was actively trying to communicate, to beckon him into its depths. Marcus closed his eyes, attempting to quell the rising tide of apprehension. Yet, in the depths of his mind, a spark of determination flared. Whatever secrets this town held, however dark they might be, he felt compelled to uncover them. For him, the journey was no longer just about solving another mystery. It was a path to redemption, a way to confront the ghosts of his past. As the night deepened, the fog outside pressed closer, its tendrils seemingly crawling along the walls of the room. In that unsettling stillness, Marcus made a silent vow. He would unravel the mystery behind the fog, no matter the cost. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating, a plunge into an abyss where every shadow could be a harbinger of despair, yet where hope might lie hidden among the remnants of forgotten souls. By the time the first pale hints of dawn began to edge the horizon, Marcus Reed had resolved that his investigation would begin in earnest. Tomorrow, he would venture out into the town's winding streets and the suffocating fog beyond, following the trail of clues that Lena's story had ignited. In that decisive moment, as the world held its breath between night and day, he felt the weight of destiny settle upon him. The past, with all its unspeakable tragedies, beckoned him forward, and the fog, both literal and metaphorical, was the veil he was determined to lift. Outside, the morning light battled the lingering tendrils of fog, creating an eerie interplay of light and shadow across the deserted streets. In that liminal space, Marcus sensed that every step he took might bring him closer to a truth that had long been buried beneath layers of despair and mystery. And as he prepared to face the day, one thought remained clear in his mind. Some secrets, once unearthed, can never be forgotten. Morning's pale light struggled to pierce the heavy shroud of fog that had settled over the town. As Marcus Reed stepped out of the Elder's Rest, the chill of the damp air greeted him with a silent promise of revelations and regrets alike. Every footstep on the cobblestone street seemed to echo the memories of long-forgotten tragedies, urging him deeper into the mystery that the fog so jealously guarded. The inn's doorway receded behind him, and Marcus set his sights on the town center, a place that appeared frozen in time. Shop windows were dark and empty, while ancient buildings leaned wearily against one another, as if sharing their secrets with the mist. With each step, the fog shifted and danced, blurring the boundary between what was real and what was born of old, whispered legends. His first destination was the modest town library, a crumbling brick building whose faded sign read Henderson Library in weathered letters. Inside, dust motes swirled in beams of weak sunlight, and the scent of aged paper filled the quiet space. Shelves groaned under the weight of history. Brittle newspapers, yellowed manuscripts, and leather-bound volumes chronicling the town's sorrowful past. Marcus wandered slowly among the stacks, his fingers trailing along spines as if seeking a hidden clue. In a secluded corner, he discovered a fragile ledger detailing local events from over a century ago. There, he read of a catastrophic night, a massacre, perhaps, or a series of inexplicable disappearances that left the town scarred. One entry in particular caught his eye, a reference to a cursed relic and a ritual that was meant to bind a malevolent force to the land. The relic, lost to time, was said to be the catalyst for the persistent fog, a manifestation of ancient sorrow and rage. As he absorbed the cryptic words, a soft, rasping voice broke the silence. "Not many come looking for these things nowadays," said an elderly librarian emerging from behind a shelf. His eyes, though tired, shone with a quiet intensity. "I'm Mr. Halvorson, and you must be new around here." Marcus inclined his head in greeting. "Yes, I'm Marcus Reed. I'm trying to piece together the truth behind the disappearances in this fog. I believe it's all connected." Halvorson's gaze flickered toward a neglected corner of the library, where a battered leather-bound book lay half-hidden beneath a pile of old newspapers. "That book," he murmured, "holds the whispered memories of a terrible night when a curse took hold. But be warned, Mr. Reed, the further you dig into our past, the more likely you are to awaken what should have remained at rest." Marcus's pulse quickened. "I appreciate the warning, but I've been chasing these ghosts for a long time now. Can you tell me more?" The librarian hesitated, then slowly retrieved the volume and set it before Marcus. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols, heartfelt accounts of loss, and desperate pleas for forgiveness. As Marcus read, he discovered that the relic was last mentioned in connection with the town's cemetery, a sprawling graveyard on the edge of a dense forest, where the echoes of the past were said to mingle with the living. With a weight of newfound purpose, Marcus thanked Halvorson and stepped back into the embrace of the fog. The library's heavy doors closed behind him, and he allowed the murmurs of the past to guide his path. Each narrow alley and deserted square whispered hints of sorrow and regret, while the fog itself seemed to pulse with a dark, silent rhythm, a heartbeat that matched his own. Before reaching the cemetery, Marcus's path led him to an aged chapel whose silhouette was barely discernible through the haze. Here, he encountered an elderly woman, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of hardship. Clutching a small, weathered rosary, she regarded him with a mixture of pity and warning. "You must be careful, son," she said in a hushed tone that trembled like the rustling of dry leaves. "The fog isn't just weather, it's a living thing. It remembers. It takes more than just souls. It steals your very sanity if you're not cautious." Marcus nodded solemnly. "I understand. I'm not here to disturb the past, but to learn from it." Her eyes, clouded with both fear and sorrow, briefly met his before she turned away, swallowed up by the shifting mist. The path eventually opened into the cemetery. Ancient tombstones jutted from the ground like jagged remnants of a long-forgotten battle, and the very air seemed to throb with a palpable sense of loss. As Marcus crossed the creaking iron gate, a low wind began to murmur through the trees, carrying with it faint echoes of voices that might have been prayers or curses. Among the weathered markers, one tomb caught his eye. A crumbling sarcophagus, adorned with arcane symbols that glowed faintly in the murk, beckoned him. The stone was unnaturally cold to the touch, as if it retained the chill of a forgotten winter. Marcus paused, placing a trembling hand against its surface, and in that moment, a rush of images flooded his mind. Fleeting glimpses of a night filled with terror, a ritual gone horribly wrong, and the anguished cries of those condemned to eternal wandering. It was here that the ledger's cryptic references began to merge with the tangible evidence before him. The relic, the cursed object spoken of in hushed tones, might be hidden in plain sight, its power seeping into the very fabric of the cemetery. Marcus's heart pounded as he resolved to search for more clues, every sense attuned to the possibility that the truth was perilously close. As the day wore on, the interplay of light and shadow deepened the cemetery's eerie atmosphere. Marcus carefully navigated the rows of headstones, his eyes scanning for any sign of the relic's presence. The silence was broken only by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of a bell tolling, a mournful dirge that seemed to mark the passing of time and the persistence of the curse. In a forgotten corner of the cemetery, Marcus discovered a series of inscriptions carved into a stone wall. The symbols were similar to those on the sarcophagus, but interwoven with a script that spoke of an ancient ritual, a ceremony meant to appease a vengeful spirit and bind its power. The words, though eroded by time, hinted at the possibility of reversing the curse, or at least understanding its origins. Marcus knelt before the wall, tracing the faded carvings with a careful finger. In the cool, damp air, his mind raced with possibilities. Could it be that the relic was not merely an object of malevolence, but also the key to an ancient act of retribution? As the fog swirled around him, carrying with it the sorrow of countless lost souls, he realized that every legend, every whispered secret, was a thread in a tapestry of pain and regret that spanned generations. The deeper he delved into the cemetery's mysteries, the more he sensed that the fog was not merely an environmental quirk. It was an active participant in the tragedy that had befallen the town. It clung to the stones, seeped into the cracks, and seemed to watch him with silent, unblinking eyes. In the stillness of that sacred place, Marcus could almost hear the echo of a long-dead voice, urging him to uncover the relic's secret before it was too late. As dusk began to settle and the sky turned a bruised shade of purple, Marcus reluctantly rose from his search. His notebook was filled with sketches of symbols, fragmented accounts of ritual, and the chilling intuition that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. Yet, the deeper he went, the more he felt the oppressive weight of the fog's ancient memory pressing down on him. He made his way back toward the town, each step heavy with the knowledge that the answers he sought were entwined with a curse that might never be fully undone. The fog, now a constant companion, whispered around him as if to remind him that some truths are best left in the dark. But Marcus had come too far to retreat now. That night, as he settled into a quiet, dusty room above a shuttered storefront, the images of the cemetery and its spectral guardian tormented his thoughts. He knew that the relic and the mystery of the fog would demand his complete attention in the days to come. The library's records, the warnings of the locals, and the eerie pulse of the ancient tombstones had all converged on one inexorable conclusion. The past was not dead, and its shadows were reaching out to claim more than just memories. In the silent vigil of the night, with the fog encircling his window like a living sentinel, Marcus Reed resolved to press onward. Tomorrow, he would return to the cemetery and seek out the remnants of the ritual, determined to unlock the secrets that had haunted this forsaken town for generations. The path ahead was fraught with peril, yet within that danger lay the hope of unearthing a truth that might finally lay the restless spirits to rest. And so, beneath a sky heavy with unshed rain and the constant, watchful presence of the fog, Marcus began to prepare for the next chapter of his quest. A quest that promised to blur the line between salvation and damnation, and ultimately force him to confront not only the cursed relic, but the dark legacy of his own past. The pre-dawn gloom of the following morning enveloped the cemetery in a ghostly light, as if the veil between the living and the dead had thinned to a mere whisper. Marcus awoke with a relentless urgency, a call from the past that would not let him rest. Donning his heavy coat and gathering his notebook, he retraced his steps to the crumbling sarcophagus that had so haunted his dreams the night before. Approaching the ancient stone, Marcus paused. The inscriptions that had seemed like mere remnants of despair now pulsed with a hidden energy, as if the stone itself bore a living memory. His fingers traced the arcane symbols, each line and curve sending a shiver through his veins. All around him, the fog swirled and coiled, carrying with its soft echoes of voices lost to time, a lament of sorrow and warning. A sudden, bitter chill swept over him. In that moment, it felt as if the cemetery itself was whispering secrets of lives interrupted and promises broken. Marcus sensed that the relic was not a mere object of malevolence, but an active force entwined with the town's tragic history. Driven by a newfound determination, he ventured deeper into the cemetery. The mist parted just enough to reveal a hidden alcove, half obscured by creeping ivy and the shifting tendrils of fog. There, almost lost beneath the tangled undergrowth, lay a weathered stone slab covered in intricate carvings that mirrored those on the sarcophagus. It was as if the slab marked a threshold, a point where the relic's power was at its most potent, a sanctuary for sorrow and unspoken hope. Marcus knelt by the slab, studying the carvings with intense focus. Among the faded symbols, he discerned a single, haunting phrase. Only when the sorrow of the lost is acknowledged shall the relic reveal its truth. The words resonated within him, echoing his own hidden grief and the burden of his past failures. Before he could delve further, a soft rustle behind him drew his attention. Emerging from the fog like a figure conjured by memory, a woman in a tattered shawl stepped forward. Her eyes, bright with sorrow and ancient understanding, fixed upon him with an intensity that made him shudder. "You should not have come here," she whispered, her voice trembling like wind through brittle leaves. The relic holds a power beyond mortal ken. It demands sacrifice, a price few are willing to pay. Marcus's heart pounded, yet he remained steady. "I must know," he replied. "The records and these inscriptions speak of a ritual, of a way to break the curse by acknowledging the grief of those lost." "Who are you?" The woman hesitated, then slowly removed her shawl, revealing a face marked by both timeless sorrow and quiet resolve. "I am Elena," she murmured. "I have been the keeper of these old memories, watching over this place since the relic was sealed away. I've seen the lives it has touched, taken, burdened, and broken." Marcus regarded her, sensing in her a kinship born of shared loss. "If you are the keeper, then you understand that this relic is a key to the town's unhealed wounds. I need to learn its secret, so that perhaps I can free the souls it has ensnared." Elena's eyes glistened with unspoken grief. "The ritual you seek is not a simple reversal of the curse," she cautioned. "It demands the acknowledgement of your own sorrow, the confrontation of your deepest regrets. The relic is a mirror. It reflects the hidden truths of the heart." In that charged moment, Marcus felt the boundaries between his own haunted past and the relic's dark legacy blur. The duty of the keeper and the burden of the investigator intertwined, as if fate had drawn them together to face a shared darkness. With careful deliberation, Elena led him to the carved stone slab. As the first weak rays of dawn began to pierce the lingering mist, the inscriptions shimmered with an ethereal glow. Marcus saw, beneath the stone's edge, a narrow crevice, a hidden entrance that beckoned them downward, into a darkness that pulsed with ancient sorrow. "Come," Elena urged softly, "we must descend. The relic awaits us in the depths, where its curse was first forged and where its truth lies entombed." Together, they pried open the crevice, revealing a narrow passageway carved from stone. With each cautious step, the temperature dropped, and the walls became adorned with faded murals depicting rituals of mourning and sacrifice. These ancient images told stories of a once thriving community that had succumbed to betrayal and grief, a community that had, in its desperation, bound its collective sorrow to a single cursed pendant. At the end of the passage, Marcus and Elena emerged into a cavernous chamber lit only by the pale glow of phosphorescent fungi. In the center of the room, upon a pedestal of carved stone, rested a small, unassuming pendant. Its dark, tarnished metal was etched with the same cryptic symbols that had haunted the cemetery. Yet, as Marcus approached, a profound sense of dread and pity enveloped him. The pendant seemed to carry within it the anguish of countless souls. Elena's voice broke the heavy silence. "This is the relic, the heart of the curse. It has drawn in the sorrow of those who have wandered into the fog, imprisoning their grief within its cold metal. To free them, and perhaps yourself, you must perform the ritual of acknowledgement." Standing before the relic, Marcus felt a swell of emotions, guilt for those he could not save, regret for past mistakes, and a deep-seated yearning for redemption. The path to liberation was not merely about unearthing secrets. It was a journey into the depths of his own wounded soul. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Marcus reached out and cradled the pendant in his hands. The moment his skin touched the cold metal, memories surged forth. Fleeting images of unsolved cases, the haunted eyes of those lost, and the relentless echo of unspoken apologies. The relic vibrated softly, as if alive, absorbing the cathartic energy of his confession. "Speak your truth," Elena urged gently. "Let the relic bear witness to your sorrow, so that it may begin to heal the wounds it has inflicted upon this town and upon you." In the profound silence of the chamber, Marcus closed his eyes. His voice, trembling yet resolute, began to recite a litany of grief and regret, a confession of all the hidden sorrows that had burdened him over the years. His words, raw and unguarded, reverberated against the stone walls, mingling with the whispers of the past. For a long, waited moment, nothing stirred but the soft hum of the relic. Then, almost imperceptibly, its etched symbols began to glow with an inner light. The chamber seemed to respond, the murals pulsing as if in sympathy with his admission. Outside, the oppressive fog shifted with new purpose, its malevolent murmur softening into something akin to a sigh of relief. In that intimate communion of sorrow and release, Marcus sensed that a change had begun. The relic, long a vessel of endless grief, now radiated a fragile hope, an acknowledgement that healing, however tentative, was possible. Yet even as the pendant's glow brightened, he knew that this was only the beginning. The ritual had set into motion forces that would require him to confront even deeper layers of the town's dark legacy, and, perhaps, the shadows of his own soul. As the first genuine light of day crept through a narrow fissure in the chamber's ceiling, Marcus and Elena slowly ascended from the subterranean depths. Outside, the fog, though still ever-present, had begun to thin, as if touched by the early warmth of dawn and the unburdening of collective sorrow. Standing in the fresh morning air, Marcus clutched the relic tightly. His resolve had crystallized. He would delve deeper into the town's tragic history, unearthing every lost fragment of the ritual that might finally sever the curse's hold. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with pain and revelation, yet it was a path he had no choice but to follow. The relic's echo would remain with him, a haunting reminder that even the darkest curses could yield to the light of honest confession and redemption. And so, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, Marcus prepared to step further into the shadows, determined to transform the sorrow of the past into a promise for a future free of its lingering curse. The morning after the ritual dawned with an unsettling stillness. Marcus and Elena emerged from the cavern's depths into a world that felt simultaneously lighter and yet burdened by a lingering heaviness. The fog, once an oppressive, amorphous mass that swallowed every ray of sunlight, now shimmered with an almost iridescent quality, as if its malevolence had been tempered by the outpouring of sorrow. Yet, even in its softened state, the mist seemed to whisper warnings of forces still at play. Marcus paused at the threshold of the cemetery, the relic safely tucked into his jacket pocket, its cold surface a constant reminder of the power they had just confronted. He looked around as if seeing the town for the first time. The ancient tombstones, the ivy-choked mausoleums, even the old chapel at the cemetery's edge, all appeared imbued with a renewed energy. The ritual had stirred the past, and now the ghosts of sorrow were restless. Elena's voice broke the silence. "It's as if the relic's confession has awakened something more than just relief in the fog," she observed softly, her eyes scanning the shifting mist that clung to every surface. "There's a deeper undercurrent, an echo of the pain that has yet to be addressed." Marcus frowned, his thoughts churning. "I felt it too," he admitted, recalling the rush of memories that had overwhelmed him in the chamber. "The relic absorbed my grief, Yes, but it also stirred up the memories of everyone else. We may have opened a door that should have remained sealed. They began their walk back toward the heart of town, retracing their steps along the weathered cobblestones. Along the way, the few early risers, haggard figures whose eyes reflected years of silent suffering, offered them subdued nods, as if acknowledging that change had begun, yet at a steep price. Each face carried the weight of untold stories, and Marcus sensed that many of these souls were still caught in the relic's curse. Near the old town square, an uneasy murmur spread among the locals. The street lamp, now glowing with a strange, diffused light even in daylight, cast wavering shadows that danced along the worn facades of deserted buildings. A man, cloaked in a threadbare coat, stepped forward and addressed Marcus in a voice that trembled with both hope and dread. You did something in the cemetery last night, didn't you?" he asked, glancing about nervously as if expecting the fog itself to answer. "They say the relic has been awakened, our lost ones, our memories, and something else." Marcus met the man's gaze steadily. "I did what I had to," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "The relic held all our grief, and I faced my own sorrow. But I fear that our past isn't so easily exorcised. There's a balance that must be maintained." The man's eyes darted around, and he lowered his voice. "I heard whispers of a ritual unfinished, a plea for forgiveness that wasn't completely answered. The fog, it seems, remembers, and some things it's not yet ready to release." As Marcus listened, a chill crept over him. That morning's revelations had shown him that while the ritual had temporarily lightened the burden of grief, it might have also unsettled something far darker. A spectral presence, long dormant beneath layers of time and sorrow, stirred at the edges of his consciousness, a presence that might not be appeased by confession alone. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to the Elder's Rest to gather his thoughts and review his notes. The inn's lobby, dimly lit by lanterns that cast flickering patterns on the walls, felt unusually silent, as if the very building was holding its breath. In the solitude of his room, he pored over the leather-bound journal that had chronicled his journey thus far. Every line, every hastily scribbled note about ancient rituals and whispered legends, now took on a weightier meaning. He recalled Elena's earlier words. The relic is a mirror reflecting not only his sorrow, but the collective anguish of the town. The incomplete ritual, the unanswered plea for forgiveness, it all pointed toward a deeper wound, one that had festered long before the fog had claimed its first victim. Marcus felt the gravity of his responsibility. The relic's power was not a simple force to be vanquished or contained. It was a manifestation of communal grief, a wound that demanded healing, even if the process might summon darker forces in its wake. As twilight fell, Marcus set out once more, this time accompanied by Elena. They returned to the cemetery, compelled by the need to seek further answers among the ancient stones and crumbling mausoleums. The air had grown cooler, and the fog had thickened into a dense, almost tangible presence that shrouded every detail in mystery. At the very center of the cemetery stood a towering oak, its gnarled branches twisting upward as if pleading for salvation. Beneath its sprawling canopy lay a weathered memorial plaque, half covered in moss, inscribed with a passage that Marcus hadn't noticed before. To heal the wound, one must embrace the forgotten tears. In sorrow, find your voice. In remembrance, let forgiveness be born. Elena's eyes widened as she read the inscription aloud. It's a promise, a guide for the ritual yet to be completed. The relic may have begun to mend the curse, but it requires the acknowledgement of every lost tear, every silent lament. Only when the sorrow of the forgotten is fully embraced can the balance be restored. Marcus's heart pounded with realization. The relic's confession was only the first step, a necessary opening of the floodgates of grief. To truly break the curse, the town needed to confront the entirety of its sorrow, to bring forth the voices of those long silenced. In that moment, he understood that his role was not simply that of an investigator, but of a mediator between the living and the lost. Under the ancient oak, Marcus and Elena organized a small gathering with the town's elders and a few brave souls who had long resisted the curse's influence. With tentative voices, they began to share stories, heartache, regret, and unspoken farewells to those who had vanished into the fog. The air filled with murmurs of remembrance as each person, one by one, contributed their piece of the puzzle. A son lost to despair, a daughter swallowed by the mist, a family's unending vigil by a shuttered window. As the shared sorrow wove through the cold night air, a subtle transformation began. The heavy mist that had so long choked the town appeared to lift, its density easing as if buoyed by the collective act of remembrance. For a fleeting moment, the oppressive silence was broken by the sound of soft weeping and the murmurs of reconciliation, a tentative bridge between the past and the present. Yet, amid the fragile hope, Marcus could sense a shadow lingering at the periphery, a reminder that some wounds, though acknowledged, might never fully heal. A low, almost imperceptible hum resonated from the oak, and for a brief instant, the gathered crowd fell silent, as if the ancient tree itself were speaking. In that pause, Marcus thought he saw a pair of spectral eyes glimmering in the darkness, watching the human act of contrition with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. The night wore on, and as each soul offered their farewell, the relic, safely ensconced within Marcus's possession, pulsed softly in rhythm with the shared lament. It was a symphony of grief and memory, a slow and steady cadence that promised both release and renewal. Marcus knew that their work was far from over. The relic had only begun its transformation, and the town's collective pain, now given voice, still held the power to summon the darkness if left unheeded. Before the gathering dispersed into the cool, starlit night, Elena approached Marcus quietly. "There is one more step," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the rustle of the leaves. "The final act of the ritual requires the one who carries the relic to make a personal sacrifice. A piece of your own soul must be offered in exchange for the full release of these tormented memories." Marcus's eyes narrowed as he weighed the words. The idea of sacrificing a part of himself, his deepest regrets, his unhealed wounds, was both terrifying and inevitable. In his heart, he knew that to break the curse completely, he would have to confront the darkest corners of his own past, surrendering a part of his identity to the cleansing power of forgiveness. "I accept," he said softly, his voice steady despite the tumult raging within. "If my sacrifice can set these lost souls free, then I have no choice but to offer what I can. I've carried this burden for too long." Elena nodded solemnly. "Then tonight, beneath the watchful eyes of the old oak, we will complete the ritual. Your sacrifice will echo through the fog, reaching every corner of this town, and in that echo, let there be healing." As darkness deepened and the wind whispered secrets among the ancient branches, Marcus prepared himself for the final act of atonement. In that hallowed space beneath the old oak, surrounded by the shared sorrow of a community and the quiet determination of a man ready to face his own demons, the stage was set for a confrontation between light and shadow, a reckoning that would determine whether the fog's curse could finally be undone. In the quiet moments before the ritual's culmination, Marcus closed his eyes and listened to the collective heartbeat of the town, a steady, sorrowful rhythm that pulsed beneath the weight of countless memories. With every exhale, he felt the darkness within him begin to lighten, replaced by the fragile promise of forgiveness. And as the first notes of the final incantation left his lips, the fog stirred once more, as if an acknowledgement of sacrifice made not out of despair, but in hope of a new beginning. Thus, beneath the ancient oak and the eternal watch of the mist, Marcus Reed took his final step toward redemption, his sacrifice poised to shatter the bonds of curse that had haunted the town for generations, and to awaken a future where the forgotten might finally be free. Night had fallen in earnest, and the ancient oak stood as a silent witness to the ritual about to unfold. A gathering of wary townsfolk and solemn elders formed a rough circle around the great tree, their faces illuminated by the ghostly glow of lanterns and the soft luminescence emanating from the relic in Marcus's trembling hands. In the heavy hush of the clearing, every rustle of leaves and distant creak of old wood seemed laden with expectation. Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding with the weight of what he must now do. Elena's steady gaze met his as she murmured, "Remember, your truth is our truth. Let your sorrow be the key to our salvation." With those words echoing in his mind, Marcus closed his eyes and began to recite the final incantation, a litany woven from memories of loss, regret, and a desperate yearning for forgiveness. His voice, at first tentative, grew firmer with each syllable until it resonated through the night like a solemn drumbeat. As his words filled the clearing, the relic in his grasp pulsed in response. A surreal light erupted from its surface, spilling across the mossy ground in shimmering patterns that danced among the gathered crowd. The fog, ever present and insidious, writhed and convulsed as if in agony. Its once oppressive density began to thin, revealing ghostly silhouettes drifting at the edge of vision. In that charged moment, Marcus felt the weight of his own memories, the faces of those he couldn't save, the failures etched into his soul, coalesce into a palpable force. A sudden, almost unbearable surge of energy coursed through him. His body felt as though it were dissolving into both light and shadow, each heartbeat a surrender of his own inner darkness. The relic's glow intensified, and spectral voices, both mournful and gentle, rose in a crescendo around the oak. For a fleeting moment, Marcus saw the faces of the lost, their eyes filled not with accusation, but with a profound, shared sorrow. They whispered words of farewell and forgiveness, each syllable a stitch mending the tattered fabric of the town's haunted past. As Marcus reached the apex of the incantation, his eyes snapped open to a blinding burst of light. The relic, now radiant with a fierce, purifying brilliance, seemed to absorb every whispered lament and tear shed that night. The collective sorrow, channeled through his sacrifice, began to unravel the ancient curse. The oppressive fog, once a shroud of malevolence, slowly lifted into the cool night air, replaced by a silence that brimmed with both grief and a tentative hope. When the light subsided, the clearing was transformed. The oak's gnarled branches, heavy with the burden of centuries, now glimmered with dew-like droplets of what seemed like ethereal luminescence. The townsfolk, their eyes wide with awe and relief, sensed that something profound had changed in the heart of their community. In the midst of it all, Marcus stood weakened but resolute, a man forever altered by the sacrifice he had made. Part of him, the darkest corners of his soul that had borne endless sorrow, was now left behind in that blinding glow, surrendered to the relic's cleansing power. Elena approached him gently, her hand warm on his shoulder. "Your sacrifice has set us free," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and reverence. "The curse is broken, and our lost ones can now rest in peace." Yet, as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the remnants of night, Marcus understood that true freedom came at a cost. He felt a part of himself slip away, memories that had long defined his struggle, the pain that had fueled his relentless pursuit of truth, now faded into a bittersweet oblivion. Though the relic's light had lifted the curse, it had also rewritten his destiny. In that quiet, transformative moment, Marcus Reed became both a liberator and a relic of his own, a living testament to the price of redemption and the eternal interplay of light and shadow. As the clearing filled with the soft murmur of renewed hope, the fog dissipated completely, leaving behind the clear, crisp air of a new day. The curse that had haunted the town for generations was undone, and the echoes of lost souls were finally laid to rest. Marcus, forever changed by the sacrifice, looked toward the horizon, a man unburdened by the ghosts of his past, yet carrying within him the eternal memory of what it meant to give everything for the sake of healing. The morning air was cool and unexpectedly clear, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom that had once choked every corner of the town. Marcus emerged from the inn with a tentative step, feeling both the lightness of a curse lifted and the lingering weight of his sacrifice. The sun ascended slowly, its warm rays dispersing the last wisps of fog and revealing a town on the brink of renewal. Strolling through the cobbled streets, Marcus observed subtle yet profound changes. Neighbors who had once lingered in silence now exchanged tentative smiles and greetings. Windows, once shuttered in mourning, were slowly being opened to let in fresh daylight and hope. The town square, once veiled in shadows, buzzed with quiet conversation and the gentle hum of new beginnings. He paused beneath the ancient oak, its gnarled branches now sprinkled with dew that shimmered like tiny fragments of a broken past mended by light. Here, where the ritual had reached its climax, Marcus felt the full impact of his sacrifice. The relic's radiant glow had freed the town from its relentless curse, yet a piece of him had been surrendered in the process, a part of his memory and sorrow now forever mingled with the town's collective grief. In a secluded corner of the square, Elena sat on a weathered bench beneath the oak's protective canopy. Her eyes, reflecting both relief and quiet concern, met his as he approached. "The town is healing," she said softly, "but I see the cost you carry in your gaze. The sacrifice you made will echo in your soul for as long as you live." Marcus offered a weary smile. "I feel it in every step, this emptiness where so much of my past once lived. And yet, somehow I also feel lighter. It's as if losing that part of me has made room for something new." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes we must let go of what we once knew to embrace the promise of a fresh start. Your sacrifice has not only freed these people, but has also sown the seeds for healing, however painful the harvest may be." In the days that followed, Marcus immersed himself in the town's slow transformation. He visited the cemetery once more, noticing that the silence was no longer solely one of mourning. Families gathered there to honor their lost ones, planting small tokens of remembrance and sharing stories that blended sorrow with hope. The relic, now enshrined in a modest chapel within the cemetery, pulsed gently, a living monument to the town's reclaimed spirit. At night, as Marcus sat by the narrow window of his room watching the stars, he reflected on the delicate balance of loss and renewal. The fog that had once masked the true face of the town was gone, but its memory lingered, a reminder of how darkness can sometimes bind a community together and how the light of understanding can ultimately set it free. One evening, while wandering along the newly revived Market Street, Marcus paused to watch a group of children playing near the old fountain. Their laughter rang clear and unburdened, a sound so pure it seemed to chase away even the faintest shadow of past despair. In that simple moment, he recognized that his sacrifice had paved the way for a future where innocence and hope could flourish anew. His own losses, though indelibly marked upon his soul, had become part of a larger tapestry, a living narrative of transformation and resilience. Seasons turned, and the town continued to heal. The oppressive fog of bygone days became a whispered legend, shared in hushed tones by elders as both caution and consolation. Marcus Reed, forever changed by the events that had bound him to the town's sorrow, embraced his new role as both guardian of its legacy and a seeker of truth. The emptiness within him, though it would never be fully filled, had given way to a quiet wisdom, a deep empathy forged in the crucible of his own sacrifice. In the gentle cadence of everyday life, Marcus came to understand that healing is not a destination, but an ongoing journey. Every sunrise brought with it the promise of renewal, and every shared memory, both bitter and sweet, wove the community closer together. His sacrifice, though it had cost him dearly, had also been a gift, a chance to begin again, with hope as fragile and persistent as the first light of dawn. Standing beneath the ancient oak, Marcus gazed out over the town that was slowly reclaiming its spirit. In that tender moment, he allowed himself to believe that even in the deepest night, the promise of a new day was never far away. In the weeks that followed the night of sacrifice, the town's transformation appeared almost miraculous. Sunlight now graced every street without the eternal haze of fog, and laughter, tentative at first, slowly began to echo in the alleys and marketplaces. Yet beneath this veneer of renewal, Marcus Reed sensed a subtle dissonance, a lingering refrain that whispered of unfinished business. Late one evening, as twilight surrendered to the cool indigo of night, Marcus walked the quiet streets alone. His steps, measured and weary, carried him toward the chapel where the relic now resided, a small sanctuary, modest yet resonant with the energy of what had transpired. Although the relic's once blinding light had dimmed to a gentle, steady pulse, its presence still stirred in him echoes of that final, fateful ritual. He paused before the chapel's heavy wooden door, his breath catching as a soft, almost imperceptible murmur drifted through the still air. It was as if the wind carried the faint voices of the lost, voices that were not content to be forgotten. Marcus's thoughts turned inward, to the hollow ache left behind by his sacrifice. That emptiness, once perceived as a necessary price for redemption, now felt like a void where something else might be stirring. Inside, the chapel was shrouded in a quiet luminescence. Dust motes swirled in the beams of moonlight that crept through the narrow stained glass windows, painting the stone floor in patches of color. Marcus's eyes were drawn to the relic, resting upon its pedestal with an almost hypnotic serenity. For a moment, he thought he saw a ripple along its surface, as if it were still reacting to the tide of his sorrow. A gentle creak at the chapel door startled him. Turning, he found Elena standing in the doorway, her face etched with concern. "You're here again, Marcus," she said softly, her voice a mixture of reassurance and caution. "I've felt it too, the weight of something unresolved. Even with the fog lifted, the echoes of our past still linger." Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the relic. "I can't shake the feeling that what we released last night was only part of the story. There's a void inside me, a part of my soul that remains unfulfilled. And tonight I heard whispers, as if the relic was trying to speak once more." Elena stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the relic. "Sometimes the act of sacrifice opens a door we never intended to unlock," she murmured. "The sorrow we release can leave behind echoes, remnants of grief, regrets that were too deep to vanish entirely. They linger in the spaces between memory and oblivion." Outside, the night deepened, and a soft wind stirred the chapel's door open just a fraction more. In that quiet moment, Marcus felt the unmistakable chill of an unseen presence. It was as though the relic, even in its newfound calm, had become a beacon for something older and far more enigmatic, a presence that existed on the periphery of both light and shadow. Driven by an inner compulsion he could neither explain nor ignore, Marcus approached the relic once more. With trembling fingers, he reached out to touch its cool surface. The contact sent a shiver through him, a delicate interplay of pain and a promise of hidden truths. The relic's glow pulsed rhythmically, echoing the beat of his own heart, and for a fleeting moment, the voices of the past rose again in a chorus of distant lamentations. In that suspended instant, images flooded his mind. A long-forgotten face in a blurred crowd, a tear-streaked farewell under a fading sky, and a solitary figure wandering the edge of darkness. The sensations were overwhelming, a collision of grief and wonder that both unsettled and compelled him. He realized then that his sacrifice had not erased the past. It had transformed it, scattering its remnants like seeds in the wind. Some of those seeds had yet to take root in the light of day. Elena's gentle hand rested on his shoulder. "Perhaps we must accept that some echoes will always remain," she whispered. "Our pasts, both personal and collective, are never truly silenced. They live on in the spaces we forget to fill, in the voids we believe we have conquered. But maybe that is not our curse, but our heritage." Marcus withdrew his hand slowly, as if reluctant to sever that fragile connection. In the silent communion of the chapel, he made a quiet vow to face the echoes of his own sorrow and the lingering shadows of the town's haunted history, however unsettling they might be. There is a strange beauty in the idea that even in the aftermath of a great sacrifice, the fragments of what once was could nurture something new, a mosaic of memory, loss, and ultimately hope. Later that night, as the chapel's heavy doors closed behind him and Elena retreated into the comforting embrace of lamplight, Marcus found himself wandering the quiet perimeter of the town. In the distance, the sound of soft weeping mingled with the rustle of leaves, a reminder that healing was a continuous, if imperfect, process. Every step he took resonated with the bittersweet truth that the road to redemption was not a single act of sacrifice, but a lifelong journey of embracing both light and shadow. Under the vast, starlit sky, Marcus gazed upward, pondering the delicate interplay between what was lost and what could still be found. The echoes of the forgotten would always be part of him, a reminder of the fragility of life, the inevitability of grief, and the enduring strength found in the willingness to remember. And as he walked back toward the heart of the town reborn, yet still haunted by its past, he carried with him a deeper understanding that sometimes the most profound healing comes not from erasing pain entirely, but from learning to live with its echoes, transforming them into a symphony of hope for the future. In that quiet moment, with the chill of the night embracing him and the distant murmur of memory as his constant companion, Marcus realized that the journey was far from over. The relic, the sacrifice, and the ghosts of yesteryear had all intertwined to form the tapestry of his existence. And it was a tapestry still in the making. A week had passed since that fateful night beneath the ancient oak, a week in which the town appeared to embrace renewal. Yet Marcus could not shake the feeling that something of the past lingered in every silent corner. Every morning, as golden light spilled over the dew-damp streets, he sensed an undercurrent of unresolved sorrow, a delicate vibration in the very air that spoke of memories too potent to fade completely. One crisp dawn, Marcus awoke with a heavy sense of disquiet. The emptiness within him, the void left by his sacrifice, had begun to pulse with unexpected intensity. In his dreams, vivid fragments of faces and voices returned unbidden. The pleading eyes of a lost neighbor, the bittersweet smile of a long-forgotten friend, and even his own voice echoing with regrets he'd never fully confessed. When he opened his eyes, the room was bathed in soft light, yet shadows danced on the walls like silent reminders of grief still unresolved. Unable to ignore these unsettling visions, Marcus reached for his journal. His pen scratched furiously over paper, recording the fragments of memory that flooded his mind. As he wrote, a chill swept through the room, not from the autumn air seeping under the window, but from a presence that felt both familiar and forlorn. Pausing, he listened. In the stillness, a whisper seemed to brush against his ear, a gentle, indistinct call that carried his name like a lullaby from a time long past. Unsure whether the sound was a trick of his weary mind or something more, Marcus set out into the waking town. Along the cobbled lanes, he found himself haunted by moments of déjà vu. A reflection in a rain-spattered window showed a flicker of a face not entirely his own. A stray, soft laugh drifted on the breeze near the market square, and in a quiet alley, he caught sight of a small, translucent figure vanishing into the mist of early morning. Each fleeting encounter left him with a profound mix of melancholy and wonder, as though the town's forgotten souls had begun to emerge, seeking acknowledgement. That afternoon, he returned to the chapel where the relic now resided. The building's ancient stone walls, which had once exuded a comforting permanence, now whispered with a subtle, eerie cadence. The relic, enshrined on its pedestal, seemed to pulse with an inner light of its own, as if resonating with the delicate echoes of grief Marcus had come to sense. He circled it slowly, knowing that new, clearly symbols had appeared on its surface, patterns that glimmered for just a moment before fading into the cold metal. Their meaning eluded him, but they stirred in him a deep, almost primal recognition. At that moment, Elena entered the chapel. Her eyes, ever perceptive and soft with empathy, fixed on Marcus's troubled expression. "I felt it too," she said quietly. "Since your sacrifice, there have been residual shadows, echoes that refuse to be silenced. Sometimes, the cost of releasing such deep sorrow is that it leaves behind fragments of memory, fragments of the past that still yearn to be understood." Marcus looked up from the relic, his voice low and hesitant. "I keep hearing voices in the stillness, Elena. They call my name or whisper fragments of conversations I can't quite grasp. And the relic, it's changed. It shows me images, memories that aren't mine, yet feel achingly familiar." Elena approached, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "The relic has always been more than a simple vessel for grief. It's a mirror reflecting the collective heartache of this town, a repository of every unspoken regret and every forgotten tear. When you offered your own sorrow, you unlocked a connection not only to your past, but to the memories of everyone lost in the fog." Together, they pored over the newly inscribed symbols on the relic. Elena traced a delicate line with her fingertip as she murmured, "This pattern. It speaks of an ancient promise. Perhaps it is a reminder that healing is not about erasing pain, but about integrating it into who we are. The echoes you're hearing, they may be calling you to reconcile with the parts of the past that even your sacrifice couldn't fully release." As dusk settled, Marcus felt a growing compulsion to follow the faint call that had haunted him. Venturing out alone into the twilight, he wandered toward the edge of town where old stone walls met the darkened forest. There, in the half-light between day and night, he encountered a figure cloaked in shadow, a young man with sorrowful eyes that seemed to hold entire lifetimes of memory. "Marcus?" the figure asked softly, as if testing the sound of the name. The voice was familiar, though he couldn't place it. It reminded him of a friend he had lost long ago, a confidant whose presence had once been a beacon in his darkest hours. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. The young man stepped forward, revealing a face etched with gentle sadness and quiet resolve. "I'm no one you have met before, but I'm also everyone you have lost. I am the echo of the forgotten, the remnant of a promise left unfulfilled. I am here because your sacrifice opened a door. And now, there is one more truth that must be acknowledged." In that charged moment, the forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient secrets, and the lingering shadows danced as if they, too, awaited the next revelation. Marcus felt a tremor within, a stirring of both dread and hope, as he realized that this apparition was a harbinger of what lay beneath the surface of his own heart. "What truth?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The spectral figure's gaze deepened. "That every sacrifice leaves a mark, and that sometimes the light you set free can cast its own shadow. Your journey is not over, Marcus. The echoes of your past and the collective sorrow of this town are calling for one final reckoning, a reconciliation with the parts of ourselves we have long tried to forget." Before Marcus could reply, the figure faded into the gathering dusk, leaving behind only the faintest trace of sorrowful laughter that mingled with the rustle of the trees. Standing alone in the twilight, Marcus felt the weight of his own heart and the profound responsibility of bearing witness to these residual shadows. He knew that his path now led deeper into the labyrinth of memory, a journey that would force him to confront not only the echoes of the town's long-forgotten grief, but the hidden, unresolved corners of his own soul. Returning to the chapel that night, Marcus found Elena waiting in the soft glow of lamplight. Without words, he shared with her the encounter and the burden it brought. Together, they resolved that the next step in healing was to embrace these echoes fully, to listen to the voices of the past, however dissonant or painful, and to allow them to guide the town toward a deeper, more authentic reconciliation with its history. As midnight approached, the relic pulsed once more, and its light shimmered in a pattern that mirrored the ancient promise Elena had mentioned. It was as if the relic itself was urging them onward, a silent beacon calling for the next act in this ever-unfolding tapestry of memory, sacrifice, and renewal. Marcus felt a strange blend of trepidation and determination. The road ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the remnants of yesterday and the promise of revelations yet to come. But in that uncertainty lay a fragile hope, a hope that by confronting the residual shadows of the past, he and the town could finally forge a future where every echo was heard, every sorrow understood, and every lost soul found its place in the light. And so, beneath the vast star-strewn sky, Marcus Reed took his first tentative step into the deeper darkness, ready to follow the echoes of the forgotten into the heart of his own unbound past. Marcus's footsteps led him away from the chapel and into the dense embrace of the old forest that bordered the town. The night was deep, and the stars hung low and heavy above him, their light dimmed by the lingering mist that had once dominated the town. Now, though the fog had receded from the streets, its ghost still clung to the woods, a spectral echo of the sorrow he had awakened. Every snap of a twig underfoot, every rustle among the fallen leaves, stirred in him memories and emotions he had long kept at bay. The forest seemed to breathe around him, exhaling long-forgotten secrets with each gust of wind. Shadows danced among the trees in patterns too deliberate to be mere chance. And sometimes, for a fleeting moment, Marcus thought he saw figures moving just beyond the edge of perception. As he pressed deeper into the darkness, a profound silence settled over the woodland, a silence that was not empty but filled with whispered voices of the past. With each step, the residual echoes of grief that had once manifested in the chapel now grew louder, converging into a chorus of murmurs that beckoned him forward. He recalled the spectral figure he had encountered by the forest's edge, its sorrowful eyes urging him to confront the unresolved fragments of his own memory. Now, those voices called to him again, mingling with the natural sounds of the nocturnal forest. Marcus paused at the edge of a small clearing, where moonlight filtered through the dense canopy to bathe the ground in a silver glow. In the center of the clearing stood a solitary stone altar, worn smooth by centuries of weather and neglect. Its surface was etched with symbols that resonated with the same language as the relic, a language of sorrow and hope, of sacrifice and redemption. Here, the forest's quiet became a confessional, and the altar a silent witness to lives intertwined with grief. Kneeling before the stone, Marcus closed his eyes and allowed the murmurs of the forest to wash over him. His mind flooded with images of faces from his past, a colleague's kind smile before tragedy struck, a friend whose laughter was lost to time, and his own reflection, a younger version burdened by fear and uncertainty. The voices grew clearer, not as distinct individuals, but as a single, resonant lament that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the earth. In that charged stillness, a gentle warmth began to radiate from the altar. Marcus opened his eyes to see faint luminescence tracing the carved lines on the stone, as if the ancient symbols were coming to life in recognition of his presence. A soft, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the clearing, a sound that melded with the rhythm of his own pulse. It was as if the altar was inviting him to offer his memories, his sorrows and regrets, so that they might finally be reconciled with the healing power of acknowledgement. "Show me what I must remember," he murmured, voice barely audible against the backdrop of nocturnal whispers. At his words, the air around him shimmered, and the clearing became suffused with a gentle radiance. Before his eyes, the images coalesced into a series of visions, a montage of moments that spanned years, small joys and crushing losses, each thread a part of the tapestry that was his life. He saw himself as a young man, full of raw determination and idealistic hope. He witnessed the slow erosion of that hope as he encountered the cruelty and unpredictability of the world, and he recalled the defining moments of loss that had driven him to seek solace in the realm of the unknown. The visions were overwhelming, both beautiful and devastating in their honesty. Tears welled in Marcus's eyes as he relived each moment. The sound of a mother's lullaby, the echo of a final farewell, the silent grief of lives cut short. And with every recalled memory, the stone altar's glow deepened, as though it were absorbing the weight of his unspoken sorrows. In the midst of these recollections, Marcus felt a presence beside him, a gentle pressure, like a comforting hand on his shoulder. Slowly, a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. It was not the spectral echo he had seen before, but rather an amalgamation of light and darkness, a being that seemed to embody the balance between memory and oblivion. "Marcus," the figure said in a voice that resonated with the calm of distant ages, "you have journeyed far to seek the truth that lies within. The echoes of the forgotten, including those within you, are the key to understanding that every sorrow can lead to rebirth." The being's eyes were kind, yet imbued with a gravity that spoke of ancient wisdom. "Do not fear these memories," it continued, "for they are not chains to your past, but bridges to your future. Embrace them, and in doing so, you shall reclaim not only what was lost, but also what can still be." Marcus's heart pounded as the figure's words washed over him. He realized that this presence was not an enemy or a remnant of regret, but a guide, a guardian of his inner truth. In that moment, the veil between his past and present seemed to dissolve, and he understood that the path to healing lay in accepting every facet of his identity, the pain, the joy, the triumph, and the sorrow alike. Rising slowly from the altar, Marcus allowed himself to be led by the enigmatic guide through the clearing. Together, they walked along a narrow path that wound deeper into the forest, each step accompanied by the quiet harmonies of nature and the distant murmur of old grief. The path was illuminated by bioluminescent fungi and the gentle glow of fireflies, lending the darkness an otherworldly beauty. It was as if the forest itself recognized his quest and was determined to lead him toward a final reconciliation. As they walked, the guide spoke in soft, measured tones about the nature of memory and the transformative power of acknowledgement. Every echo, every sorrow is a lesson, and every lesson, no matter how painful, is a step toward wholeness. Your sacrifice in the town was only the beginning, a necessary severance of old bonds. But now you must integrate what remains, for the fragmented pieces of your soul can be reforged into something resilient and radiant. The guide's words resonated deeply within Marcus. He recalled the sacrifices he had made, the parts of himself he had relinquished in the name of healing the town. Yet, standing there in the forest's embrace, he felt an emerging conviction that his journey was not about the loss of identity, but its transformation. The shadows that had haunted him were not enemies to be banished, but parts of him that, when acknowledged, could illuminate the path to a richer, more authentic existence. Finally, the path led them to a small, serene glade. In the center, a clear pool of water lay still, its surface reflecting the myriad stars overhead. The guide motioned toward the pool. "Gaze into the water, Marcus. See not what is lost, but what endures. The reflections will reveal not only your pain, but the strength that has carried you through it. Marcus knelt at the edge of the pool and peered into its depths. In the rippling reflections, he saw the myriad moments of his life intertwined with the legacy of the town, the faces of those who had vanished into the fog, the echoes of shared grief, and the spark of hope that had ignited his journey. It was a vision of raw, unvarnished truth, one that left him both vulnerable and empowered. Tears streamed silently down his face as he whispered, I remember it all." The water shimmered as if in response, and in that moment, Marcus felt a profound sense of release. The residual shadows that had once threatened to overwhelm him began to settle into a calm, steady light, a gentle reminder that every scar carried a story, and every story had the power to heal. The guide stepped back into the shadows, leaving Marcus alone with his reflection and his newfound understanding. Though the path ahead remained uncertain, the journey through the abyss of memory had granted him a clarity he had long sought. The echoes of the forgotten no longer loomed as specters of regret, but as vital parts of a whole that was still being written. With a final, steadying breath, Marcus rose from the glade and began his return through the forest. The night was no longer a realm of haunting echoes, but a quiet companion on his path to integration, a path that would lead him back to the town, to Elena, and to a future where every fragment of his past was embraced as a cornerstone of hope. In the silent aftermath of that nocturnal odyssey, Marcus carried with him the gentle certainty that even the darkest memories could give birth to light, and that the journey into the abyss was not an end, but a necessary passage toward becoming whole again. At dawn, with the first soft hues of morning painting the sky, Marcus emerged from the forest, a man both weathered and renewed. The arduous journey through the abyss had stripped away layers of old sorrow, replacing them with a delicate clarity. Every step he took along the dew-kissed path was a step toward reclaiming himself and returning to the town that had both haunted and healed him. The streets of the town, once overshadowed by relentless fog and grief, now lay bathed in gentle sunlight. The transformation was tangible. Storefronts, once shuttered in fear, now opened their doors to neighbors greeting each other with tentative smiles and quiet hope. As Marcus walked the familiar cobbled roads, he felt the echoes of his past no longer as chains, but as a soft murmur woven into the tapestry of the town's renewed spirit. At the heart of the town, near the ancient oak that had witnessed so much sorrow and so much sacrifice, Marcus found Elena waiting. Her eyes, deep with both wisdom and compassion, shone in the clear light of day. She greeted him with a warm smile that carried the promise of continuity beyond loss. "Welcome back," she said softly, extending her hand. "How do you feel?" Marcus paused, considering the question as he looked around at the reborn community. "I feel whole in a way I never expected," he replied. "The journey through the forest showed me that my memories, the grief and joy alike, aren't meant to be banished. They're parts of who I am, and they connect me to this place, to all of you." Elena nodded, her expression reflecting both understanding and quiet pride. The relic, the sacrifice, it was never about erasing the past, but about releasing its weight. Now, the echoes that once haunted us can serve as bridges between what we've lost and what we still have. Together, they strolled toward the small chapel where the relic now rested, a humble monument to the town's painful history and its slow, resilient healing. In the soft light of morning, the relic's surface glimmered faintly, etched with symbols that now spoke of hope alongside sorrow. Townsfolk gathered outside the chapel, drawn by the palpable sense of renewal. Some carried fresh flowers, others murmured quiet prayers of thanks, and all looked toward Marcus with eyes that spoke of shared hardship and collective aspiration. Inside the chapel, the atmosphere was reverent yet serene. The air, once heavy with grief, now resonated with a gentle murmur of voices, stories of remembrance and forgiveness. Marcus approached the relic and rested his hand on its cool surface. In that moment, he felt not the sting of past losses, but the warmth of every memory he had ever known, a mosaic of moments that now formed the foundation of a future defined by acceptance and light. In a soft, steady voice that carried through the silent sanctuary, Marcus addressed the gathered community. We have all carried our share of sorrow. Our individual losses and collective grief have shaped us. But today we stand together, not in the shadow of that sorrow, but in the light of our shared resilience. Let the relic remind us that our past, with all its pain, is also a source of strength, a reminder that from every tear, hope can be born. His words, simple yet profound, resonated with every heart in the room. In that collective moment of vulnerability and strength, the barrier between the living and the lost felt thinner, transformed from an ominous divide into a gentle continuity of remembrance and renewal. After the gathering, as the town slowly stirred into the rhythm of everyday life, Marcus and Elena found a quiet moment beneath the ancient oak. Its sprawling branches, heavy with new leaves and soft with dew, seemed to cradle the very essence of the town's rebirth. They sat in companionable silence, watching as the morning advanced into a bright, promising day. Do you think the echoes will ever truly fade? Elena asked softly. Marcus considered her question, his eyes fixed on the interplay of light and shadow beneath the oak. I think they'll always be with us, he replied, but they won't be haunting us anymore. Instead, they'll serve as a reminder of how far we've come, of every loss that led to this moment of renewal. They're part of our story, not a chain that binds us to pain. Elena smiled, a gentle expression of hope and understanding. Then let's remember them well, and let every echo remind us that even in the deepest darkness, there is a promise of light. In the days and weeks that followed, Marcus dedicated himself to helping the town fully embrace its renewed identity. He listened to the stories of those who had been touched by the curse, encouraging them to share their experiences and find healing in collective remembrance. The town's transformation was not instantaneous. It was a slow, delicate process, like the unfurling of a long dormant flower. But with every story told and every memory honored, the community grew stronger and more united. Marcus found solace in the understanding that his journey was part of a larger tapestry, a never-ending interplay of light and shadow, loss and rebirth. Though he still carried the memory of a sacrifice, he now saw it as a vital part of his evolution, a necessary passage that had allowed him to rediscover the beauty in vulnerability, the strength in acknowledging every fragment of his past. Under the ancient oak, with the relic standing as a silent guardian of their shared history, the town continued its gentle transformation. In the soft glow of each new dawn, every heart remembered that healing is not the erasure of pain, but the art of weaving every sorrow into a story of hope. And so, as Marcus Reed embraced his new role, a guardian of both memories and the promise of tomorrow, he looked out over the town with quiet determination. The echoes of the forgotten had not vanished, but had become a harmonious refrain, a reminder that even the deepest scars could give way to a future bathed in light. The days turned into weeks, and the town blossomed in ways that even the residents had only dared to hope for. Every sunrise now carried the promise of renewal, a gentle reminder that while the past was ever present, it no longer had to be a shackle, but could be transformed into a source of strength. Marcus found himself at the heart of this transformation, a quiet guardian of memories and a beacon for those seeking solace in the wake of loss. On one crisp autumn morning, the town gathered in the square beneath the ancient oak. Today was a day of remembrance, a festival not of mourning, but of celebration for the resilience that had carried them through decades of sorrow. Lanterns, hand-painted with symbols of hope and healing, hung from every branch. The air was filled with soft music and the murmur of shared stories, each narrative weaving into the collective tapestry of the community's legacy. Marcus stood at the edge of the crowd, his eyes tracing the familiar faces that now shone with quiet determination. In their smiles and gentle nods, he saw the echoes of every lost soul reconciled into a brighter future. Yet, as he listened to the laughter of children playing and the soft cadence of elders recounting tales of yesteryear, he could not help but feel that his own journey was far from complete. After the festivities, Elena found him seated beneath the oak, the relic resting on a nearby stone pedestal, a symbol of both remembrance and the promise of transformation. Its surface, once etched with painful reminders, now glimmered with new inscriptions. Elena's eyes, filled with empathy and a quiet wisdom, met his as she sat beside him. "Do you feel it too?" she asked softly. "The relic is speaking again. I've noticed its symbols shifting, almost as if it's inviting us to record the next chapter of our story." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a small, reflective smile emerging. "It's as if our past isn't a closed chapter, but a living archive. Every memory, every sorrow we've embraced becomes a part of who we are, and from that, something new is born." He paused, gazing at the relic. "I've been thinking of collecting these stories, an oral history of our town, not to dwell on the pain, but to celebrate the journey we've taken together." Elena nodded. "Our legacy is more than loss. It's a mosaic of hope, resilience, and renewal. By honoring every piece of our shared history, we empower the future." Inspired by her words, Marcus soon embarked on a mission. He visited every home, every gathering place, listening intently as residents, young and old, shared their stories. In the hushed tones of twilight, by the glow of hearth fires, the town's hidden narratives flowed forth. There were tales of quiet heroism in the face of despair, of bonds formed amid grief, and of love that endured despite the shadows of the past. With each account, Marcus pinned down the raw emotions and subtle joys interwoven with the community's struggles. His journal gradually transformed into a living manuscript, a tribute to the people who had turned sorrow into strength and darkness into light. In these recorded memories, the relic's gentle glow seemed to pulse in time with every heartbeat of the town, a silent affirmation that healing was an ongoing communal process. One evening, as dust settled over the rebuilt market square, a small group of children gathered around Marcus, their eyes wide with curiosity. "Tell us a story," one of them pleaded, voice trembling with anticipation. Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with a tender mixture of nostalgia and hope. He began recounting the tale of the town's darkest days and the sacrifice that had birthed a new dawn, his voice a gentle cadence that wove past and present into a single, hopeful narrative. In that moment, beneath the starlight and the ancient oak's protective branches, Marcus understood that his role was not only as a keeper of sorrow, but as a weaver of legacy. Every shared memory, whether filled with tears or laughter, was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to transform even the deepest wounds into a mosaic of beauty and resilience. As the years passed, the town continued to thrive. The relic remained enshrined in the chapel, its symbols ever-changing, a living chronicle of their collective journey. And Marcus, with his journal always at hand, became more than just a guardian of memories. He evolved into a mentor and storyteller, bridging the gap between generations, ensuring that every voice, no matter how faint, found its place in the grand narrative of their shared history. On quiet nights, when the sky was clear and the stars shimmered like distant promises, Marcus would return to the ancient oak. There, with the relic's soft luminescence as his companion, he would reflect on the path he had traveled. The echoes of the forgotten were no longer voices of despair, but gentle reminders of every lesson learned and every hope kindled. In embracing the legacy of pain and joy, Marcus had discovered that healing was not a destination, but a perpetual journey, a journey where every memory, Every sacrifice and every tender moment contributed to a future bathed in light. And in that enduring truth, the town and its people, bound together by the resilient threads of their shared legacy, continued to move forward, each day a testament to the power of remembrance, renewal, and the eternal promise of a new dawn. Dawn arrived with a subtle shift, the kind that hinted at secrets lingering in the quiet spaces between night and day. The town, still basking in the glow of its newfound hope, stirred into life. Beneath a sky brushed with soft pastels. Yet, for Marcus Reed, every sunrise now carried an undercurrent of anticipation, a feeling that, despite the healing, some echoes of the past had yet to be fully laid to rest. That morning, as Marcus walked the familiar streets toward the chapel, he couldn't shake a strange sensation, a subtle tug at the edges of his awareness. The relic, once a steadfast symbol of their collective renewal, now glimmered with an almost imperceptible, restless shimmer. Its inscriptions, which had settled into patterns of hope and remembrance, occasionally flickered with unfamiliar symbols. For a moment, the relic's surface seemed to ripple as if disturbed by an unseen current. At the chapel's entrance, Elena was already there, her eyes drawn to the relic with a mixture of wonder and concern. "Marcus," she said softly, "have you noticed this change?" Her voice was gentle, but carried the weight of unspoken questions. Marcus stepped closer, his fingers hovering near the relic without touching it. "Yes," he admitted, "I felt it last night, a whisper on the edge of my dreams. I thought the echoes of our past had finally settled, but it seems there's something more." He studied the relic, watching as its glow pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't entirely familiar, a cadence that spoke of both promise and warning. Over the following days, the flicker in the relic grew more persistent. In quiet moments, while Marcus recorded the town's evolving stories, or during long walks beneath the ancient oak, a fleeting shadow would dart at the periphery of his vision, and the relic's symbols would shift imperceptibly. Some nights, soft murmurs, barely louder than the rustling leaves, floated through the chapel. They were not the voices of grief or despair Marcus had once known, but something else, a timbre that hinted at secrets buried deep beneath the veneer of healing. Curiosity and a lingering sense of duty drove Marcus to return to the forest where his journey had taken him before. Under a twilight sky heavy with the promise of rain, he ventured once more along the winding path that led to the stone altar in the clearing. The altar, bathed in the gentle luminescence of bioluminescent fungi and flickering firefly light, seemed unchanged by time, but Marcus sensed a faint pulse beneath its surface, as if it too were alive with memories. Kneeling before the ancient stone, he closed his eyes and listened intently. At first, he heard only the familiar murmur of the forest, the soft sigh of the wind through the trees. Then, amid the natural chorus, a single, clear note rang out, a sound that resonated deep within him, stirring emotions he had thought long resolved. It was a call, quiet yet insistent, beckoning him to remember something forgotten. In that moment, visions swept over him, a montage of images, both joyful and sorrowful, from moments he had long buried. Faces of people he had loved and lost, fragments of conversations and promises made under starlight, all merged with the spectral memory of the town's darkest hours. But intertwined with these recollections was something else, a shadow that lurked at the edges, a presence that seemed determined to reclaim its own story from the depths of time. Marcus opened his eyes, his heart pounding with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. He realized that the relic's renewed flicker was not a sign of regression, but of an unfinished chapter, a reminder that the past, with all its layered complexities, never truly fades away. Instead, it evolves, reawakening when least expected to remind the living of the fragile balance between light and darkness. Returning to the town that night, Marcus found Elena waiting at the chapel door. The relic's glow now pulsed more steadily, casting long, dancing shadows along the stone floor. Elena's gaze was thoughtful, her eyes reflecting both concern and a deep, empathetic understanding. "It seems our journey isn't finished yet," she said, her voice echoing softly in the quiet space. Marcus nodded slowly. Perhaps we've been too quick to assume that healing meant an end to the echoes. Instead, maybe it's a continuous dialogue with our past, a conversation that must be honored as it shifts and grows. He ran a hand over the relic's surface, feeling its cool, steady vibration. Every flicker, every shadow, they are reminders that our legacy is not static. It lives and breathes, demanding that we remain vigilant, that we continue to remember and reconcile. In the days that followed, the townspeople noticed subtle shifts as well. Whispers of a gentle presence in the night, dreams that carried hints of the relic's mysterious language, and a renewed, albeit quiet, air of introspection. Marcus began hosting small gatherings in the chapel, inviting residents to share any unusual experiences they had noticed, a stray word, a fleeting image, or a soft echo that might have otherwise been dismissed. In these sessions, the collective voice of the town wove together, recounting not only the tales of sorrow and redemption, but also the quiet mysteries that lingered in the spaces between. Each story, every shared experience, added another layer to the tapestry of their legacy, a tapestry that was far from complete. The relic, in its unending dance between shadow and light, became a symbol not of finality, but of the perpetual evolution of memory and hope. It was as if the artifact was urging them to embrace every nuance of their past, to allow both the pain and the promise to coexist, forging a future that acknowledged every facet of their shared human experience. And so, beneath a sky that seemed to shimmer with both uncertainty and promise, Marcus Reed and his fellow townsfolk learned to live with the gentle flicker in the shadows, a constant reminder that even as they moved forward into the light, the echoes of the forgotten would forever be part of the story. In embracing this living legacy, they discovered that every shadow cast by the past could be transformed into a beacon of understanding, guiding them through the complexities of life with grace, courage, and an unwavering commitment to remember. As night fell once again and the relic's glow pulsed steadily against the chapel walls, Marcus gazed upward, feeling the familiar tug of the past intermingling with the promise of tomorrow. The journey was ongoing, a delicate balance between remembrance and renewal, and he knew that, no matter what shadows might arise, the town's legacy would continue to shine, a luminous testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The whispers grew stronger. At first, they were nothing more than fleeting sensations, like the distant murmur of voices carried by the wind or the brief flicker of movement in the corner of Marcus's eye. But as days turned to weeks, the presence behind them became undeniable. The relic, once a symbol of healing, now pulsed with a quiet insistence. Its shifting inscriptions glowed brighter at night, rearranging themselves in patterns that Marcus could not yet decipher. The town, while still thriving, carried an undercurrent of unease. Children spoke of hearing their names called in empty rooms. The elders whispered of dreams where familiar faces wore unfamiliar expressions. Something or someone was trying to speak. One evening, as Marcus sat beneath the ancient oak, he felt the presence more acutely than ever before. The air around him thickened, the usual rustling of leaves falling into an unnatural silence. He closed his eyes, steadying his breath, and listened. And then the voice came. Soft, urgent, a whisper threading through the fabric of reality. You must remember us. Marcus's eyes flew open. The night around him was still, yet his pulse pounded in his ears. He turned toward the chapel, where the relic's glow was visible even from a distance, a beacon in the dark. The echoes weren't fading. They were growing stronger. The forgotten name. Determined to uncover the truth, Marcus pored over every recorded story he had collected. The town's history, meticulously written in his journal, held tales of sorrow, resilience, and healing, but something was missing. There were gaps, small, almost imperceptible absences in the narratives. Certain names, once spoken freely, were now absent from collective memory. Certain events, once crucial, seemed blurred around the edges. It was as if something or someone had been deliberately erased. Elena, sensing Marcus's unease, joined him in his search. Night after night, they sifted through records, questioning the elders, tracing every thread of the town's past. But no one seemed to notice the missing pieces until one day, an old woman named Edith hesitated when recounting her family's history. There was another, she murmured, her voice faltering as if the memory resisted being unearthed. But I cannot recall his name. It's strange, isn't it? As if the years took him away, not just from this world, but from our minds. A cold realization settled over Marcus. This was no ordinary forgotten soul. This was someone who had been erased. That night, Marcus returned to the relic alone. The air in the chapel was heavy, the silence stretching unnaturally. He placed his hand on the relic's surface, feeling the hum beneath his fingers, and whispered, "Who are you?" The answer did not come in words, but in a vision. A town much like his own, but shrouded in perpetual twilight. A figure standing at the heart of it, his face blurred, his identity slipping away like sand through fingers. The people walked past him as if he were nothing more than a shadow. Forgotten, unseen. And then the voice came again, clearer this time, trembling with urgency. "I was one of you, but you let me vanish." Marcus gasped as the vision shattered, the chapel's candlelight flickering violently. He stumbled back, his chest heaving. The relic's glow was no longer warm. It pulsed with something colder, something unresolved. Who had they forgotten? And why? The next morning, Marcus gathered the townspeople in the square. He spoke of the visions, the missing name, the presence that lingered at the edges of their memory. At first, there was silence. Then, murmurs of uncertainty. And then, slowly, recognition, like the edges of a long-lost dream returning in fragments. "I remember," an elder whispered. "There was a boy, wasn't there? A young man who lived among us. But his name," he frowned, as if grasping at something just beyond his reach. Others nodded, faces darkened with unease. The realization settled over them all like a heavy fog. There had been another, and they had forgotten him. But the question remained, was he simply lost to time? Or had something more sinister erased him? The relic pulsed once more, as if waiting for them to take the next step. And Marcus knew one thing for certain. The past was not done with them yet. In the uneasy silence that followed Edith's confession about the missing youth, a heavy air of responsibility settled over the town. That very evening, as dusk bled into night, Marcus convened a small meeting at the town hall. Lanterns flickered in the old building as he addressed a circle of wary, yet determined faces. "We have a duty not only to celebrate our renewal," Marcus began, his voice resonating with quiet authority, "but to honor every piece of our past, even those we've long tried to erase." He paused, glancing at the old records he had gathered and the tear-stained letter clutched tightly in his hand. "There's a name that has been forgotten. A boy, a friend, Thomas. And I believe his absence from our collective memory is no accident." A murmur ran through the room. Elderly residents exchanged glances as memories, faint and fragmented, stirred in their minds. One of them, a man with weary eyes, finally whispered, "I do remember a Thomas, a mischievous child with a bright smile." But his story faded away as if purposefully erased. Determined to piece together the mystery, Marcus and Elena spent long hours in the dusty recesses of the town's ancient library. Amid crumbling ledgers and yellow diaries, they uncovered scattered references to Thomas, a beloved neighbor, a boy whose laughter once filled the streets on warm summer afternoons, and whose sudden disappearance had left an unspoken void. Late one afternoon, Marcus discovered a crumpled letter hidden behind a row of forgotten books. Written in hurried, trembling script, the letter spoke of a ritual meant to honor every soul, a ritual that, tragically, had been interrupted. The final lines were a desperate plea, cut off. Abruptly, without his name, the sacrifice remains unbalanced. Remember Thomas, for without him, our hearts remain fractured. Armed with this revelation, Marcus returned to the chapel where the relic rested, a silent sentinel pulsing with a newfound urgency. That night, as a storm brewed in the distance, he pressed his hand against the relic's cool surface. In the wavering candlelight, its shifting inscriptions rearranged themselves into a single, clear phrase: "Remember Thomas." The relic's message reverberated through Marcus's soul, and he felt the spectral voice, the one that had whispered, "I was one of you, but you let me vanish, transform into something more personal, more pleading." It was Thomas calling out from the edges of oblivion. The next day, under a somber sky, Marcus gathered the townspeople in the square beneath the ancient oak. His voice, steady yet laden with emotion, carried across the silent assembly. Our history is incomplete if we choose to forget those who once walked among us. Today, I ask you to help restore the memory of Thomas, a name that was stolen, a life that was nearly lost to the dark. At first, the square remained mute. Then, as if from the recesses of collective remembrance, one elderly woman began recounting a half-remembered tale of a boy with a quick laugh and a kind heart. One by one, others added their own fragments: a shared game in the dusty streets, a secret hideaway behind the old mill, whispered promises of friendship. The name Thomas, once a ghost of memory, began to echo clearly in the crisp air. That evening, inspired by the resurgence of memory, the town decided to erect a small memorial beneath the ancient oak. On a modest stone plaque, engraved in bold, unwavering letters, they inscribed, "In loving memory of Thomas, never forgotten, always with us." As a memorial was unveiled beneath a sky streaked with twilight, the relic in the chapel pulsed with a soft, almost content glow. In that moment, the oppressive shadows that had haunted the past receded, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement that healing is an unending dialogue with what we remember and what we choose to forget. Standing by the new memorial, Marcus felt a profound shift within himself. The journey had not been merely about lifting a curse or offering sacrifice. It was about embracing every fragment of history, even those too painful to confront at first. In reclaiming Thomas's name, the town had taken a vital step toward mending the deep fissures left by loss and regret. Under the gentle gaze of the ancient oak, as the wind whispered softly through its branches, Marcus allowed himself a small, hopeful smile. The relic's shifting inscriptions had done more than speak of a forgotten name. They had reminded every soul present that the past, in all its complexity, is an essential part of who we are. And only by honoring every echo of that past can the promise of tomorrow shine with true, unburdened light. The forgotten was reclaimed, and in that reclamation, a new chapter of healing began, a chapter where every voice, every name, would be remembered, and no shadow of sorrow would ever again be allowed to vanish into silence. As summer unfurled its long, golden days, the town found itself suspended between renewal and mystery. The memorial for Thomas had become a cherished beacon of remembrance, its stone plaque a quiet promise that every lost soul deserved to be honored. Yet beneath the surface of this gentle rebirth, Marcus sensed that the relic's story was far from complete. Late one humid evening, during the annual harvest festival when laughter and song filled the streets, Marcus slipped away from the crowd. Drawn by a compelling force, he returned to the quiet sanctuary of the chapel. There, in the flickering candlelight, the relic pulsed with an unfamiliar rhythm. Its once stable inscriptions now shifted and danced, revealing intricate patterns that glowed with a subtle, ethereal light. As Marcus knelt before it, his fingertips brushed along the cool metal, and he felt as if the relic were whispering secrets that only the night could hold. In the days that followed, peculiar events began to ripple through the town. A young girl, known for her vivid, otherworldly dreams, spoke of a luminous figure who visited her each night, a gentle presence that recited fragments of an unknown tale. Others, too, recounted dreams imbued with radiant pathways and spectral voices, all hinting at a new narrative emerging from the relic's shifting glow. The collective murmur grew louder, weaving into the fabric of daily life a subtle tension between what had been reclaimed and what was yet to be revealed. One stormy night, as rain drummed steadily against the chapel's ancient walls, Elena arrived at Marcus's side. Her eyes, usually so steady, now flickered with both wonder and concern. "Marcus," she said in a hushed tone, "I had a vision, a pathway illuminated by the relic's light, leading deep into the forest beyond the town. It felt like an invitation, or perhaps a challenge to remember something we've long forgotten." Determined to understand the relic's evolving message, Marcus and Elena spent long hours in the town's dusty library. Hidden within a crumbling folio, they discovered an obscure passage referring to the threads of destiny, a mystical tapestry woven from the memories of the past, the pulse of the present, and the promise of the future. The text spoke of forgotten names and unspoken bonds, hinting that reclaiming a lost identity was only the first step in a greater journey toward healing. Could it be that the relic, in its new form, was calling them to uncover yet another erased name, a voice that had once echoed in the town's heart, but had slipped silently into oblivion? As the warm days turned to balmy nights, the phenomenon deepened. Residents reported uncanny dreams. One man saw a narrow, winding path illuminated by soft, glowing symbols. A young woman dreamt of a radiant figure, a boy with kind, sorrowful eyes, standing at the threshold of a vast, enchanted forest. Each dream, though different, resonated with the idea that the town's history was more layered than anyone had ever imagined. Motivated by these revelations, Marcus and Elena organized a gathering at the chapel. Beneath a canopy of lantern light, the townspeople came together, sharing their dreams and whispered memories. An elderly man recalled an old legend of a bright-spirited child who had once brought blessings during harvests. A teenager spoke of a vision of a radiant path leading to a hidden glen. Slowly, the threads of a new story began to weave together, a story that promised to integrate the forgotten with the living, bridging the gap between loss and hope. Standing before the expectant crowd, Marcus's voice resonated with quiet determination. "Our past is not a closed chapter," he declared, "but an ever-growing tapestry. In reclaiming Thomas's name, we mended one wound. Now, the relic beckons us to remember another, a forgotten name, a silent promise, an echo of destiny that has long awaited its return." His words stirred the gathered souls, and a murmur of recognition rippled through the assembly. That night, as the town slumbered under a star-strewn sky, Marcus returned once more to the chapel. The relic's glow pulsed in a delicate, mesmerizing rhythm, and its inscriptions now bore an unmistakable message, an interwoven series of symbols that, when read in the light of their gathered stories, formed a single, clear plea: remember Samuel. In a surge of emotion, Marcus recalled fragmented childhood memories, a mischievous boy with laughter like chimes, whose presence had been a quiet joy in the early days of the town. Samuel, a name half remembered, almost erased by time. The realization sent a shiver through his soul. The relic was urging them to reclaim yet another lost piece of their collective heart. Over the following weeks, the town began a new chapter of remembrance. With reverence and determination, they gathered fragments of memory, piecing together Samuel's story from scattered recollections, old photographs, and whispered family tales. In a communal act of healing, a new memorial was erected beside Thomas's plaque, a simple elegant stone etched with the name Samuel. The act of remembrance radiated outward, soothing old wounds and knitting the community ever closer together. As Marcus stood beneath the ancient oak, its branches swaying gently in the summer breeze, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The relic's evolving message had reminded them that healing was an ongoing dialogue, a conversation with the past that must continuously be nurtured and honored. Each forgotten name reclaimed, each story revived, wove another thread into the tapestry of their shared destiny. In that quiet, luminous moment, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Marcus understood that their journey was far from over. The relic, a silent guardian of memory, would continue to reveal the hidden layers of their collective soul, guiding them through the interplay of shadow and light. And so, with hearts unburdened and eyes wide open, the town stepped boldly into a future where every forgotten echo was given its rightful place, a testament to the enduring power of remembrance, resilience, and hope. The threads of destiny had been reknit, and in that intricate tapestry, the legacy of every soul, lost, reclaimed, and forever cherished, shone like a beacon, illuminating the promise of tomorrow. A chill wind swept through the chapel on a storm-dark evening, carrying with it the scent of impending rain and a whisper of dread. Marcus stood alone before the relic, its familiar glow now tinged with a strange, deep crimson that pulsed in time with his racing heartbeat. As the candlelight danced along the stone walls, the relic's inscriptions shifted once more, a delicate, trembling script emerging where only quiet remembrance had reigned before. This time, the words were unmistakable. Remember Olivia. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then, as if summoned by that single plea, a vision unfolded before Marcus's eyes. He saw a young woman, her eyes a haunting blend of sorrow and defiant strength, standing amidst a swirl of shadows and lost memories. In the vision, Olivia's face flickered like a fading photograph. Glimpses of a life filled with unspoken grief, secrets buried beneath layers of time, and a quiet anger that spoke of wrongs never righted. Marcus's heart pounded as the vision deepened. He could almost feel the chill of her touch, the weight of her unvoiced plea. It was not merely a call for remembrance, but a warning, a reminder that some memories, if left unacknowledged, might rise not only to heal, but to haunt. The relic's soft crimson pulse seemed to throb with the energy of a story untold, a history that had been deliberately shrouded in silence. At that moment, Elena entered the chapel, her gentle presence a steady counterpoint to the turbulent surge of emotion. She saw the change in the relic's glow and the turmoil etched on Marcus's face. "Marcus," she murmured, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, "what do you see?" He struggled to find his voice. I saw her, Olivia. There's a sorrow in her eyes, a pain that feels as if it's been locked away for too long. But I also sense something darker, a warning that her memory, if left unheeded, might awaken forces we're not prepared to face. Elena's gaze softened with empathy, yet a flicker of concern passed through her eyes. "The relic's revelations have always been twofold," she said quietly. "They grant us healing, but they also remind us that our past is not without its shadows. Olivia's story, like Thomas's and Samuel's, is a thread in our town's tapestry. Yet it seems hers carries a heavier burden." In the days that followed, whispers spread throughout the town of the relic's new inscription. The community, still tender from its recent journey of remembrance, was divided. Many welcomed the chance to integrate yet another lost memory into their collective healing. Others, however, felt a deep, uneasy tremor at the thought that not all forgotten souls came with benign intent, that some might carry unspoken curses or unresolved injustice. Marcus and Elena organized another meeting in the square beneath the ancient oak. Under the watchful eyes of neighbors, the town gathered to share their experiences and fears. An elderly man recalled vague memories of a kind-hearted girl whose laughter had once brightened long, gloomy days. A young woman described in dreams as a spectral figure calling on the edges of memory, her voice laced with both longing and warning. The name Olivia, once nearly erased from recollection, began to stir in quiet conversations, a gentle yet insistent reminder of a legacy that had not been fully honored. That night, as rain battered the stained glass windows of the chapel, Marcus found himself back before the relic. Its glow was steady now, yet underneath its soft light, the undercurrent of crimson pulsed with an energy that refused to be ignored. In the solitude of the sacred space, Marcus closed his eyes and reached deep within himself, summoning every fragment of memory and every whisper of intuition. In the hush of the night, a voice, faint and trembling, spoke from the depths of the relic, carrying a resonance that was both melancholic and resolute. Remember me and heal the wound, for every forgotten soul leaves a scar on our shared heart. The words echoed in Marcus's mind, a reminder that the journey of healing was far from complete. The relic was not just a repository of memories. It was a living testament to the ongoing dialogue between past and present, a dialogue that demanded that no voice be permanently silenced. Standing alone in the chapel's dim light, Marcus understood that to truly honor their legacy, the town must face not only the joyful remembrances, but also the unbidden visions that warned of lingering darkness. Olivia's memory, with all its untold sorrow and hidden truths, was a call to acknowledge every scar, both those that had already healed and those that still ached beneath the surface. In that moment, Marcus resolved to delve deeper into the mystery of Olivia. With Elena by his side and the community's fragile hope guiding him, he would seek out the hidden chapters of their shared past, determined to weave every thread of destiny into a tapestry of truth and healing. The relic's shifting echoes were a beacon and a warning that their journey was an ever-unfolding story, one where every forgotten name held the key to a more complete, if complicated, redemption. And so, beneath the relentless rhythm of rain and the quiet murmur of memory, Marcus stepped forward into the unknown, prepared to reclaim the lost, honor the unbidden, and ensure that every echo, no matter how faint, would find its rightful place in the legacy of their town. The storm had passed, leaving the town washed clean, yet still shrouded in the quiet mystery of what had been and what was yet to come. In the soft light of a crisp morning, Marcus and Elena set out with renewed determination. Olivia's name, echoing with both beauty and sorrow, had ignited a fire within them. They resolved to uncover every hidden thread of her story, convinced that her truth was essential to the town's continued healing. At the town's old library, a repository of whispered legends and faded recollections, they began their search. Dust motes danced in the beams of early sunlight as Marcus carefully flipped through brittle pages of diaries, local histories, and forgotten manuscripts. Elena, her eyes scanning the spines of ancient volumes, gently prodded the memory of long-forgotten residents. "Marcus," she said softly, pausing before a fragile ledger, "I believe there might be something here. Listen to this entry from over 70 years ago." She read aloud, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Olivia, a bright spirit with eyes like twilight, who once brought laughter to our quiet streets. Her smile was said to rival the summer sun. But tragedy befell her when secrets too heavy for this town were whispered in the dark, and slowly, as if in mourning, she faded from our memory." The passage sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. He could almost see her, a radiant girl whose presence had been dimmed by unspeakable sorrow. The entry ended abruptly, as if the writer had been forced to cut off the truth. Determined to follow the thread, Marcus and Elena canvassed the town. They visited the oldest families, pored over faded photographs, and listened to the soft murmurings of memories from those whose minds still harbored fragments of the past. An elderly woman named Miriam whose eyes held decades of stories, recalled in a hushed tone. I do remember little Olivia. She was gentle and brave, but there was a sadness about her, as if she carried a burden far beyond her years. Some say she vanished after a terrible event, a secret that none dared speak of. Emboldened by these recollections, Marcus and Elena ventured to an abandoned manor on the outskirts of town, a place whispered about in childhood tales as Olivia's old home. The manor was cloaked in ivy and memories, its once grand halls echoing with the voices of a time long past. In a dust-covered attic, they discovered a battered wooden chest. Inside, wrapped in yellowed lace, was a small leather-bound diary. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened the diary. The pages were filled with a careful, graceful script. In Olivia's own words, the diary revealed a life of quiet dreams and secret anguish. She wrote of a forbidden love, of promises made beneath the silver glow of the moon, and of a betrayal that shattered her spirit. Her final entry, dated on a stormy night, much like the one that had heralded her disappearance, read, I fear that if my truth is ever known, the town will bear the weight of my sorrow, and I shall be forever forgotten. Yet I cling to hope that one day, the voices of the lost will rise, and in remembering, we shall find our salvation. As Marcus and Elena absorbed the haunting beauty of her words, a profound realization settled over them. Olivia's story was not just one of heartbreak. It was a warning, a plea to embrace every painful memory, and a call to complete the tapestry of their shared past. The relic's inscription, Remember Olivia, now pulsed with a quiet urgency, as if it yearned for her truth to be woven into the collective memory of the town. Later that evening, in the gentle glow of the memorial square beneath the ancient oak, Marcus addressed the gathered community once more. His voice, both tender and resolute, carried across the hushed crowd. Today, we add another thread to our tapestry of remembrance. Olivia's story, her hopes, her heartbreak, her secret sacrifice must no longer be hidden in the shadows. Let us honor her memory, not as a ghost of sorrow, but as a beacon of courage, urging us to face even the darkest parts of our history. A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Inspired by Marcus's words, the town agreed to a new rite of remembrance, a ceremony dedicated to unearthing and embracing the truths long buried in silence. In a heartfelt act of communal healing, they would honor Olivia by integrating her story into their legacy. Her diary was carefully preserved, its pages now a bridge between the past and a more authentic, whole future. That night, as the chapel's relic pulsed softly in tandem with the rhythm of the town's collective heart, Marcus felt a stirring of profound peace. In reclaiming Olivia's memory, they had taken another courageous step toward mending the fractures of the past. The journey ahead remained uncertain, and the echoes of sorrow would always be present. But now, every forgotten name, every unbidden vision was part of a vibrant, living legacy, one that shone with the promise of redemption, resilience, and the unyielding power of truth. And so, beneath a sky streaked with the delicate hues of dawn, the town began a new chapter, one where every story, every tear, and every whispered memory was cherished. The threads of destiny were being rewoven, stitch by tender stitch, into a tapestry that celebrated the full spectrum of the human heart. In the gentle aftermath of Olivia's unveiled past, the town felt as if it were standing at the threshold of a new era. The heavy burden of long-suppressed memories was gradually giving way to the soft light of truth. The memorials for Thomas, Samuel, and now Olivia had become sacred beacons, each a testament to lives once dimmed by forgetfulness, now reawakened with purpose. It was on a brisk autumn morning that the community gathered once more in the square beneath the ancient oak. The air was crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke and the promise of renewal. Lanterns still hung from the oak's sturdy branches, their light steady and warm. echoing the hope that pulsed through every heart present. Marcus, standing at the front of the assembly, looked out over familiar faces, those who had shared in the pain of loss and in the slow, deliberate act of remembrance. His eyes glimmered with the conviction of a man who had seen both darkness and light, and now he spoke in a tone that was at once soft and resolute. "We have come a long way," he began, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd, "in reclaiming the names and memories that time nearly stole from us. We have mended parts of our collective heart. But today, I invite you to join me in one final act, a reconciliation of shadows." A murmur rippled through the gathering as the relic's influence seemed to brush the edges of their thoughts. In the chapel, its glow had taken on an even softer quality, a quiet interplay of silver and gold that spoke of unity rather than division. The relic, once an enigmatic vessel of sorrow, now pulsed with a gentle cadence that resonated like a lullaby to forgotten wounds. Elena stepped forward beside Marcus, her presence a calming force in the cool morning air. "Our past is intricate, a tapestry woven of both joy and grief. It is the dark threads that give depth to the light, and the light that helps us see the beauty in our scars. Today, we honor not only the names that have returned to us, but also the lessons they carry." As the ceremony began, the townspeople were invited to share small tokens of remembrance, a faded photograph, a scrap of fabric from a treasured garment, even a whispered name carried on the wind. Each offering was placed in a newly erected memory box at the base of the oak, a communal vessel designed to hold the relics of their shared history. With each token, the box grew heavier with the essence of lived experience, a mosaic of countless moments stitched together by love, loss, and resilience. In that quiet, sacred space, Marcus felt a stirring deep within, a mingling of gratitude and relief. The relic's inscriptions, which had once commanded them to remember, now shimmered with an additional, transformative message: embrace and forgive. It was as if the ancient artifact, having borne witness to the town's suffering and redemption, was urging them to release any lingering burdens. For a long, breathless moment, silence reigned, punctuated only by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant call of a morning bird. Then, one by one, voices began to rise in unison, a chorus of shared memories and gentle absolution. Elderly hands clutched at weathered tokens. Children, wide-eyed with wonder, listened to stories passed down in hushed tones of reverence. And even those who had once recoiled from the weight of their past now found comfort in its acceptance. In the midst of the celebration, Marcus stepped away from the crowd for a moment and walked to the chapel. There, under the watchful gaze of the relic, he paused and closed his eyes. He recalled every whispered sorrow, every moment of joy and despair, and let them wash over him like a healing tide. In that solitude, he realized that reconciliation was not the end of their journey, but a gentle promise of continuity, a reminder that even in the darkest shadows, forgiveness could kindle a light strong enough to guide them forward. When he reopened his eyes, the relic shone brighter than ever, a living symbol of the town's unyielding spirit. The inscriptions glowed softly, reflecting back the names of those once lost, now found, and the promise of a future where every echo would be honored. Returning to the square, Marcus joined Elena and the others with a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they embraced the legacy of their past, not as a chain of regret, but as the very foundation upon which a vibrant, compassionate future could be built. In that moment, under the ancient oak and amid the gentle murmur of a reconciled community, the shadows of memory became allies rather than adversaries, and every scar, every tear, was woven into the everlasting tapestry of their shared destiny. And so, with hearts united in both remembrance and hope, the town stepped boldly into tomorrow, a tomorrow where the light of forgiveness illuminated even the deepest shadows, and where every whispered name was a cherished note in the eternal song of life. In the quiet days following the reconciliation ceremony, the town settled into a gentle rhythm, a cadence of remembrance interwoven with the promise of tomorrow. The relic, its inscriptions now a serene blend of remember and embrace and forgive, radiated a soft, steady light from within the chapel. Its glow, a silent guardian of collective memory, seemed to pulse in tune with the heartbeat of the community. Marcus often found himself at the chapel's doorstep during those tranquil mornings, the cool light of dawn reflecting off the relic's surface as if it held countless untold stories. Though the scars of the past had been honored and healed, he sensed that the relic still harbored mysteries, whispers of what had been, and hints of what might be. One crisp morning, as the town prepared for its annual celebration of renewal, a new inscription appeared on the relic. Delicate symbols, unfamiliar yet imbued with the same ancient grace, shimmered into view. As Marcus watched, mesmerized, the inscription slowly resolved into a single, luminous phrase, "Beyond the shadows, we rise." The message sent a ripple of anticipation through the community. It was as if the relic was gently urging them not only to remember and forgive, but also to look forward, to embrace the future with courage and unity. The townspeople gathered once more beneath the ancient oak, their faces aglow with hope and curiosity. Elena, ever perceptive and steady, addressed the assembly. Our past has taught us that every sorrow carries a seed of strength. Today, the relic offers us a final blessing, a call to rise above what has been and step boldly into what will be. Let us honor every memory and let that remembrance fuel our journey forward. In the days that followed, the town embarked on new projects born of this collective resolve. Old community centers were restored, and once forgotten traditions were revived with fresh vigor. Young and old came together to plant a living memorial, a garden of native blooms and winding pathways, symbolizing the continuous cycle of growth, loss, and rebirth. Marcus spent long hours among the new saplings, often pausing to trace the relic's gentle radiance with his eyes. In its soft light, he felt a stirring of possibility. The relic had been a mirror to their sorrow, but now it shone as a beacon of transformation. Its final message echoed in his mind, urging him to see beyond the shadows and embrace the light of a new day. At the inaugural celebration of the garden, a vibrant festival of color, music, and shared laughter, the town gathered beneath the ancient oak. Lanterns swung gently in the breeze, and the air was alive with a symphony of voices, each one a testament to resilience. In that moment, Marcus realized that their journey was not defined by the darkness they had overcome, but by the future they had courageously chosen to create. As twilight fell and the first stars appeared, Marcus stepped away from the jubilant crowd for a brief moment of quiet reflection. Looking up at the vast sky, he allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The relic, its inscriptions now a permanent part of the chapel's quiet majesty, pulsed softly with a promise that every memory, every shadow, was not an end but the start of a new horizon. In that promise, the town's legacy was complete, not in the perfection of a pain-free past, but in the beauty of a future built on the strength of every remembered moment. And as the night deepened and the garden glowed softly under the starlight, the people understood that they were not merely surviving the echoes of yesterday. They were rising, together, into the boundless light of tomorrow. The relic's gentle luminescence had become a steadfast presence in the town, a silent witness to every sunrise and every whispered memory. As the seasons turned, the Garden of Remembrance flourished, its winding paths and blooming flowers narrating the collective journey of every soul once lost and now cherished. Each morning, Marcus would greet the relic at the chapel's doorstep, its soft, steady pulse harmonizing with the heartbeat of the community. Under the watchful gaze of the ancient oak, Marcus began to pen a new volume in his journal, a chronicle that embraced not only the sorrow and sacrifice of their past, but also the vibrant hope of tomorrow. In its pages, he recorded the voices of the townspeople, the bright laughter of children amid the blossoming garden, the gentle murmur of elders recounting old tales beneath the stars, and even the quiet echoes of grief that had been transformed into enduring resilience. Though the relic's inscriptions had settled into a form that spoke of remember and embrace and forgive, its influence continued to evolve. Late at night, when the world was hushed and the silver moon cast long shadows, a delicate murmur seemed to rise from the very walls of the chapel. It was a whisper of promise, a reminder that memory is a living, breathing thing, ever shifting with time, yet constant in its truth. In the months that followed, the town's transformation rippled outward. Neighbors from distant villages, drawn by stories of a community that had turned sorrow into strength, began to visit. They came not only to see the radiant memorials and the thriving garden, but also to learn the secret of healing through remembrance. Festivals, once marked by quiet mourning, blossomed into celebrations that honored every fragment of the past as a vital thread in the fabric of their collective future. One evening, beneath a tapestry of lanterns and the soft glow of countless stars, Marcus stood beside Elena as the town gathered in joyous unity. His gaze wandered over the smiling faces and the gentle flicker of candlelight reflecting in their eyes. "We have built something truly beautiful here," he said, his voice a mixture of pride and quiet wonder. "Every name we've reclaimed, every story we've shared, it is a testament to the strength of our spirit, a legacy that will endure long after we are gone." Elena's smile was soft yet resolute as she replied, "Our memories bind us together. They remind us that even in our darkest hours, there's always a spark waiting to be kindled into light." As the celebration carried on, Marcus found himself wandering to the old chapel one last time that night. In the quiet sanctum, the relic's glow pulsed with an almost imperceptible warmth, its inscriptions a gentle hymn to the enduring power of remembrance. In that luminous solitude, Marcus realized that healing is not a destination, but an ongoing dialogue between what has been and what can be. Every forgotten name reclaimed, every shadow transformed into a song of hope, was a promise that as long as hearts remembered and voices spoke in unison, the legacy of their community would live on, eternal and undimmed. Years later, Marcus's journal would reside in the town's modest museum, a cherished archive of trials, triumphs, and the tender power of memory. Future generations would come to learn of the time when a town once shrouded in fog emerged into the light through forgiveness and unity. And so, beneath the ancient oak and the ever-watchful relic, the people understood that their journey was endless, a continuous interplay of light and shadow, loss and renewal. Their legacy was not defined by the darkness they had endured, but by the radiant hope they had chosen to nurture. In that promise, the spirit of the town endured, a luminous testament to the unyielding power of memory, forgiveness, and the eternal human spirit. Years passed like gentle whispers in the wind, and the town that had once been cloaked in fog had grown into a beacon of resilience and hope. The relic, still enshrined in the chapel and forever etched with the messages of remember and embrace and forgive, continued to guide each generation as they wove their own threads into the vast tapestry of collective memory. Under the ever-watchful gaze of the ancient oak, children now played freely in the garden of remembrance, their laughter a vibrant counterpoint to the soft murmur of the past. The memorials for Thomas, Samuel, and Olivia stood side by side, their inscriptions a sacred chorus that celebrated both the pain and the beauty of a shared history. Marcus's journal, its pages filled with the chronicles of struggle, healing, and ultimately transformation, had become a cherished artifact in the town's modest museum, a living testament to the journey of a community that had chosen to confront its darkest shadows and emerge into light. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced upon a gentle breeze, a new chapter began to unfold. A group of curious teenagers, descendants of those who had carried the legacy of remembrance, gathered at the chapel. With wide eyes and eager hearts, they listened to the soft cadence of the relic's glow, a glow that, even after all these years, still pulsed with quiet wisdom and gentle mystery. Among them was Lila, a thoughtful girl whose inquisitive nature reminded many of Marcus in his younger days. With the blessing of the town's elders, she had been entrusted with the responsibility of recording the next phase of their history. As she sat quietly on a stone bench beneath the ancient oak, Lila opened a fresh journal and, with careful strokes, began to write the story of a new dawn, one where the lessons of the past were embraced to forge a brighter, kinder future. In a nearby classroom, the local schoolteacher shared the tale of the relic and the community's long journey of healing with a captivated audience of children. He spoke of the forgotten names that had been reclaimed and of the power of forgiveness to transform sorrow into strength. The children listened, their imaginations alight with visions of glowing relics and courageous souls who had once faced the darkest of nights. Meanwhile, Elena, now a revered elder with gentle wisdom in her eyes, sat with other townsfolk on the steps of the chapel. Together, they reminisced about the days when fear and grief had threatened to tear them apart, and celebrated the collective courage that had united them in remembrance. Their voices, softened by the passage of time, blended into a harmonious melody, a reminder that every whispered memory, every tear shed in the quiet hours, had paved the way for this peaceful era. Late one evening, as twilight melted into starlight and the relic's inscriptions shimmered in the dim glow, Lila found herself drawn once again to the chapel. Standing before the ancient artifact, she reached out hesitantly and let her fingers graze its cool surface. In that moment, a gentle warmth spread through her, a silent communication that transcended words. The relic seemed to speak directly to her heart, conveying a timeless message, that the journey of healing was unending, and that every generation had its role in preserving the delicate balance between memory and hope. With newfound resolve, Lila pledged to document not only the history of those who had come before, but also the living legacy of the town, a legacy that thrived on the interplay of light and shadow, joy and sorrow. In her journal, she wrote of how the relic continued to inspire acts of kindness and bravery, and of how the town's spirit shone like a beacon for all who sought solace in the embrace of shared memory. In time, the story of the town spread far beyond its borders, inspiring neighboring communities to confront their own forgotten histories and to seek healing through remembrance. Festivals of light and memory became annual celebrations, where people from distant places gathered to share their stories, to learn from one another, and to honor the universal truth that every soul, no matter how briefly present, left an indelible mark on the tapestry of life. And so, beneath the timeless branches of the ancient oak and guided by the steady light of the relic, the town stepped forward into each new day with hope rekindled. The past, with all its complexities, was no longer a chain that bound them to sorrow, but a foundation upon which they built an enduring legacy of compassion and renewal. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the first light crept over the horizon and the relic pulsed softly in the sacred stillness of the chapel, the people of the town understood that their story was eternal, a living tapestry woven with threads of memory, forgiveness, and the unyielding spirit of the human heart. And as Lila closed her journal that night, the gentle murmur of the relic echoed in her mind, a timeless promise, that as long as hearts remembered and voices spoke in unison, the legacy of every cherished soul would live on, forever and unforgotten. In the soft glow of dawn, a new radiance stirred at the heart of the town. As Lila strolled along the garden path that had grown from the seeds of collective remembrance, a shimmering light danced beneath ancient oak. At the base of the venerable tree, delicate filaments of luminescence began to weave an intricate pattern on the earth, a pattern that mirrored a radiant sun rising behind a gentle swirl of mist. It was as if the relic, long a silent guardian of memories, had awakened with a new purpose, to serve as a beacon for what was yet to come. Word of the relic's renewed glow spread swiftly. The quiet town, once known only for its painful history and delicate healing, soon found itself at the crossroads of destiny. People from far and wide, scholars, mystics, and wanderers in search of hope, arrived with hearts open to witness this mysterious light. They came drawn by the promise that the relic held secrets not just of sorrow and loss, but of rebirth and endless possibility. Lila, now revered as the keeper of the legacy, embraced her calling with quiet resolve. Each day, she would sit beneath the ancient oak, her journal in hand, recording the relic's subtle shifts and the soft murmur of the wind as it whispered new visions. In one such moment, she beheld a breathtaking vision, a glorious sunrise stretching across an endless horizon, its golden rays intermingling with the lingering mist. In that vision, the relic revealed that the journey of healing was not a final destination, but an ever-unfolding process, a promise that every shadow of the past could give way to the brilliance of tomorrow. Over time, the town blossomed into a vibrant center of renewal and wisdom. The relic's steady light transformed the community into a gathering place for those yearning to understand the delicate balance between memory and hope. Neighbors, once bound solely by the weight of grief, now shared stories of courage and triumph, weaving their diverse narratives into a grand tapestry of collective resilience. The beacon of the relic shone not as a relic of sorrow, but as a luminous promise, a reminder that every ending births a new beginning, and that the legacy of every cherished soul can illuminate the path forward. In that enduring light, as the sun rose higher and bathed the town in warmth, the people understood that their history was not a chain to be broken, but a foundation upon which they could build a future rich with compassion, unity, and endless possibility. The beacon of tomorrow had arrived, and with it, the eternal promise that as long as hearts remembered and voices united, the legacy of hope would shine forever. In the cool embrace of early summer, a palpable excitement began to ripple through the town, a subtle promise that the future was arriving on gentle wings. The relic's soft glow continued to guide hearts and minds, its inscriptions a harmonious blend of remembrance, forgiveness, and a radiant call toward what lay ahead. Now, the community prepared for an event that would mark a new milestone in their unfolding story, the Convergence Festival. For weeks, townspeople worked side by side to transform the central square into a vibrant mosaic of memories and dreams. Banners were hung alongside freshly painted murals, each image reflecting moments of past struggle and emerging hope. At the base of the ancient oak, near the ever-watchful relic in the chapel, a temporary pavilion had been erected, a sacred space where voices, young and old, would share the wisdom of their journey. Lila, now more confident in her role as keeper of the legacy, coordinated the festival with a quiet passion. She had gathered stories from every corner of the town, tales of hardship, of lost names and found souls, and of the light that had emerged from each tear. Her journal, its pages thick with vibrant recollections, had become a cherished heirloom passed down from one generation to the next. As she arranged for storytellers and musicians to perform, Lila felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, a confirmation that every memory, every whispered hope had led them to this day. On the morning of the festival, the town awoke to a sky painted with the pastel hues of dawn. Neighbors greeted one another with warm smiles, their faces reflecting both the quiet resilience of the past and the bright anticipation of what was to come. In the central square, the atmosphere was electric with possibility. Children ran with handmade kites fluttering in the gentle breeze. Elders recounted fragments of old songs beneath the ancient oak, and every heart pulsed in unison with the gentle, guiding light of the relic. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus, now a figure of both wisdom and quiet inspiration, took his place at the center of the gathering. His voice, steady and imbued with the weight of countless remembered moments, rose above the soft murmur of the crowd. Today, he declared, we celebrate not only our journey from darkness into light, but the power of every memory that has forged our path. Each name we have reclaimed, each story we have shared, has brought us to this convergence, a moment where hope and history join to shape our future. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting into gentle applause. One by one, speakers emerged, young voices and seasoned souls alike, each offering their own reflection on the town's transformation. Stories of Thomas's mischievous laughter, Samuel's unyielding kindness, and Olivia's bittersweet courage mingled with fresh narratives of new beginnings. The air was alive with the symphony of shared experience, a vivid tapestry woven from both grief and joy. In a quiet corner of the square, Elena watched the gathering with a serene smile. Her eyes, still bright with the wisdom of years, shone with quiet pride as she observed how far they had come. The relic's glow, now warm and steady, bathed the pavilion in a gentle radiance that seemed to bless every heartfelt word and every tender embrace. She recalled the long, arduous days when fear had once silenced voices and shadows had threatened to erase treasured memories. Now, in this moment of convergence, the town was a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a beacon of hope for all who sought to transform pain into light. As the day wore on, the festival reached its crescendo. Musicians strummed soft, lilting tunes that echoed through the square, while storytellers wove narratives that connected the past to the future in a single, continuous breath. Dancers moved gracefully among the crowd, their movements a visual echo of the relic's enduring rhythm. And in the midst of it all, the ancient oak stood steadfast, a silent guardian of memories and a witness to the rebirth of community. In the closing hours of the festival, as twilight merged into a velvet night dotted with stars, Lila stepped forward to share her final words. With a trembling yet determined voice, she spoke of the relic's latest inscription, a final, luminous phrase that had emerged just days before. Beyond the shadows, we rise. Her words resonated deeply, affirming that the past would forever inform the future, and that every shadow cast by yesterday was destined to give way to the brilliance of tomorrow. In that moment of collective clarity, the town felt a profound unity, a convergence of hope, memory, and the promise of endless possibility. Every heart present knew that their legacy was not confined to the pages of a journal or the echoes of a long-forgotten name. It lived in the vibrant energy of the present, in the gentle light of the relic, and in the shared determination to rise, together, into a future where every memory shone as a beacon of hope. And as the first gentle notes of a new dawn crept over the horizon, the people of the town embraced the promise of that radiant future, an eternal testament to the power of remembrance, unity, and the unyielding light that forever guides us home. Under the soft caress of a new dawn, the town awoke to a world reborn, a place where every whispered memory and each reclaimed name now shone like embers, lighting the path toward an unfolding future. The relic, enshrined in the quiet sanctity of the chapel, continued to radiate its gentle glow. Its inscriptions, a harmonious blend of remember, embrace, and forgive, and now the luminous promise, beyond the shadows, we rise, have become a timeless guide for all who sought to honor the past while stepping boldly into the future. In the weeks that followed the Convergence Festival, life in the town blossomed with renewed vigor. Neighbors gathered in the revitalized Garden of Remembrance, where vibrant flowers mingled with time-worn stone memorials. Here, children laughed and played beneath the ancient oak, their joyous voices a living counterpoint to the stories of those once nearly lost. And every day, as the sun's first rays gently unfurled over the horizon, the relic pulsed softly, its steady light a quiet reminder that every shadow, every tear, had helped kindle the flame of hope. Lila, now firmly established as the keeper of the legacy, found herself at the heart of this vibrant transformation. With her journal in hand, she roamed the winding paths of the town, gathering new stories from young and old alike. Each tale, of hardship overcome, of dreams rekindled, and of love forged in the crucible of memory, added yet another precious thread to the community's ever-growing tapestry. Her writings, filled with both poetic recollections and earnest declarations of hope, were shared in schools, at festivals, and during intimate gatherings beneath the oak's ancient boughs. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in a gentle breeze, a mysterious visitor arrived. Cloaked in twilight hues, the stranger carried with them a weathered parchment sealed with symbols that resonated with the relic's own language. Whispers spread quickly through the town, a promise that another hidden chapter of their collective story was waiting to be revealed. The parchment hinted at forgotten traditions and secret bonds that had once united the town in a celebration of life's most sacred moments. Its cryptic message stirred both excitement and reverence among the people, inviting them to delve once more into the depths of their shared heritage. Guided by an unquenchable curiosity and a profound sense of duty, Lila and a small band of volunteers embarked on a quest to decipher the ancient document. Their journey took them into the quiet recesses of the town's archival halls, dusty rooms filled with faded photographs, riddled diaries, and records that held the echoes of generations past. Each discovery was a small victory, a piece of the puzzle that illuminated the rich tapestry of rituals, customs, and heartfelt promises that had been nearly erased by the passage of time. As days melted into weeks, the mystery of the parchment began to intertwine with the ever-present glow of the relic. Its inscriptions took on new layers of meaning, a reminder that the power of remembrance was both infinite and evolving. At a community meeting held beneath the ancient oak, Lila addressed her fellow townspeople with eyes alight with determination. "We stand here today at the threshold of a new chapter," she declared. "Our past has always been our strength, a wellspring of wisdom, love, and resilience. This parchment calls us to honor not only what we have reclaimed, but also to uncover the deeper traditions that once bound us together. Let us embrace this mystery as another spark in our eternal flame." The community, inspired by Lila's words and buoyed by the relic's warm, unyielding light, responded with heartfelt enthusiasm. Together, they planned a new celebration, a festival that would bridge ancient customs with modern dreams, a gathering to mark the continuous, transformative journey of their shared legacy. Under lantern-lit skies, with music echoing through the revitalized streets and laughter mingling with gentle remembrance, the town once again came together as one. It was a moment of convergence, a testament to the unbreakable bond between memory and hope. In that timeless celebration, Marcus, now an elder whose eyes still sparkled with the wisdom of a lifetime, watched with quiet pride as the next generation carried the torch forward. He recalled the long, arduous nights of sorrow and the profound sacrifice that had once lifted the town from darkness into light. Now, seeing the community united in purpose and joy, he knew that every struggle, every forgotten name, had been woven into the fabric of a destiny that was ever brightening. Under the ancient oak's protective canopy, as the festival's final notes dissolved into the soft embrace of night, the relic's gentle pulse beat on, a steady reminder that healing, like memory, is eternal. Its light whispered of endless possibilities, of journeys yet to be taken, and of the promise that even the smallest ember of hope could ignite a radiant tomorrow. And so, with hearts alight and spirits unbound, the town stepped forward into the future, a future where the legacy of every cherished soul continued to shine, where every shadow was transformed into a beacon of renewal, and where the eternal tapestry of their shared existence was enriched by the embers of tomorrow. In the quiet hours of early spring, as the chill of winter gave way to the tender warmth of renewal, the town gathered once more beneath the ancient oak. The mysterious parchment, now fully deciphered, had revealed a covenant written by the forebears of the community. Its elegant script spoke of unity, of sacred traditions woven into the very fabric of their shared destiny, and of a promise that the light of hope would guide them through every season of life. Lila, standing at the forefront as the keeper of the legacy, unfurled the weathered parchment before the assembly. The delicate symbols, once shrouded in enigma, now shone with clarity. Under the gentle morning light, she recited its timeless message, her voice trembling with both reverence and resolve. In the bond of memory, we are as one. In the covenant of our hearts, the past and future entwine. May every sorrow be a lesson, every joy a beacon, and every name remembered be a promise of eternal hope. As her words floated on the cool breeze, the townspeople felt a stirring deep within their souls, a recognition that they were not merely heirs to a tragic history, but active participants in a living, evolving tradition. The covenant beckoned them to honor the ancient customs that had once united their ancestors, and to create new rites that would celebrate the beauty of shared memory and collective renewal. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Elders, steeped in decades of quiet wisdom, gathered with the younger generation to recount the oral histories that had been nearly lost. They spoke of rituals performed under starlight, of songs sung in the glow of communal fires, and of promises made beneath the very oak that now stood as a silent guardian over their legacy. Each story, whether whispered or boldly declared, became a thread in the intricate tapestry of the new covenant. Together, the community embarked on the creation of a sacred ceremony, an event that would mark the inauguration of their renewed traditions. They repaired and adorned the old chapel, transforming its humble interior into a luminous sanctuary where past and present could converge. Fresh garlands, interlaced with wildflowers and ivy, hung from its time-worn beams, and softly lit lanterns cast gentle shadows that danced across the stone floor. On the night of the ceremony, the square was alive with anticipation. Neighbors arrived clad in garments that blended the old with the new, subtle nods to traditions of yesteryear merged with the vibrant energy of modern hope. At the heart of the celebration, beneath the ancient oak and before the relic that had long served as their guiding light, Lila, accompanied by Marcus and Elena, led the congregation in a solemn yet joyful ritual. Together, they circled a newly erected stone altar, a symbol of the covenant that now bound them. One by one, individuals stepped forward to share a personal vow, a small token of memory, or a promise for the future. A young mother placed a tiny, hand-painted token upon the altar in honor of a long-lost friend, while an elderly man offered a faded photograph, the edges softened by time, yet imbued with the warmth of remembrance. With every offering, the community wove another thread into the tapestry of their collective identity. As the ceremony reached its crescendo, a soft luminescence began to emanate from the relic, its inscriptions gently shifting to reveal a final, radiant phrase. United in memory, we forge tomorrow. The glow bathed the entire square in a gentle radiance, and in that moment, every face shone with quiet determination. The covenant was more than an echo of the past. It was a living promise, a luminous guide for the future. In the hush that followed, Marcus stepped forward, his eyes reflecting both the weight of history and the brilliance of newfound hope. We are the guardians of this legacy, he intoned, his voice resonant and sure. Each of us carries within our hearts the stories of those who came before, and it is our duty to honor them by building a future defined not by loss, but by the strength of our unity. Let this new covenant be our guiding light, a reminder that even in the face of darkness, our shared memory will forever kindle the flame of hope. A wave of heartfelt applause and gentle murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd. In that sacred moment, as the cool night air mingled with the soft strains of an ancient melody, the town embraced its destiny. The covenant was sealed, a bond not only with the past, but with every promise of tomorrow. And as the celebration slowly gave way to quiet reflection beneath the starlit sky, the relic continued to pulse softly in the chapel, a steadfast beacon for a community reborn. In the gentle glow of that enduring light, the people knew that they were not defined by the shadows they had once known, but by the radiant covenant of memory and hope that would guide them, generation after generation, into the endless promise of a new horizon. In the soft twilight of an early evening, a subtle dissonance began to stir at the edges of the town's newfound joy. Though the relic still shone with its steady light and the covenant had united every heart, its inscriptions, once a clear chorus of hope, now occasionally flickered with an unusual, almost melancholic hue. Patches of pale violet danced among the familiar words, hinting at a tension left unresolved. A few residents reported glimpses of an unfamiliar figure at the forest boundary, a fleeting silhouette that vanished with the first light of dawn, leaving behind a chill that lingered in the air. Whispers soon spread through the town of an ancient tale, long suppressed and nearly forgotten, about a shadowy presence that once sought to disrupt their fragile peace. In hushed voices, elders recalled warnings from days when old fears threatened to overwhelm them, and the memory of that time stirred unease among even the bravest souls. Lila, the ever-vigilant keeper of the legacy, began to notice that the relic's glow sometimes pulsed in a rhythm that was different from its usual cadence. Its inscriptions, while still proclaiming "remember" and "embrace and forgive," now carried an undercurrent of mystery, a subtle signal that something from the past was stirring awake. The curious interplay of light and shadow prompted the town's scholars and mystics to gather, poring over ancient texts and dusty records in search of an explanation. One cool evening, as the community convened beneath the ancient oak, Marcus stood at the forefront. His weathered eyes scanned the gathered faces, a mixture of cautious hope and quiet concern. "Our covenant has been our guiding light," he began, his voice steady yet tinged with gravity. "But every legacy is a living story, one that evolves as we do. It appears that an old shadow, one we thought had been laid to rest, now reappears on our horizon. This is not a sign of our undoing, but rather a call to delve even deeper into our past, to understand and integrate every fragment of our memory." Elena, her gaze compassionate and resolute, added, "We have faced darkness before, and through unity, we have transformed it into light. This emerging shadow may carry with it lessons we have yet to learn. Our covenant, our commitment to remembering and forgiving, must now extend to embracing the complexities of our legacy, even the parts that unsettle us." As the meeting progressed, a chorus of voices rose in gentle agreement. Neighbors shared recollections of old warnings and nearly forgotten superstitions. Some recalled the somber legends of a time when a mysterious presence had roamed the lands, while others expressed a firm belief that every emerging shadow was simply another facet of their collective soul, a reminder that healing is an endless, evolving journey. In that moment of shared resolve, the town pledged to confront the mystery together. They agreed to establish a small council of elders, scholars, and dreamers to study the relic's latest changes and to uncover the origins of the haunting presence. Their goal was not to banish the shadow, but to understand it, integrating its lessons into the rich tapestry of their history. As night descended and the last light of day surrendered to a canopy of stars, the community dispersed with quiet determination. The relic in the chapel, its light steady yet mysteriously tinted, pulsed like a heartbeat, reminding them that every challenge was also an opportunity for growth. The ancient oak stood silent and watchful, a steadfast guardian of memories and a witness to their evolving destiny. With hearts united and eyes turned toward the unknown, the town embraced the emerging mystery as a natural part of their journey. For in the interplay of light and shadow, every forgotten sorrow could be transformed into a stepping stone toward an ever brighter tomorrow. And so, beneath the soft murmur of the night, the covenant endured a living, evolving promise that no shadow, however deep, could ever dim the radiant light of a community committed to remembering, healing, and rising together. The next evening, under a sky brushed with the deep indigo of approaching night, the newly formed council gathered within the hallowed walls of the chapel. The air was thick with anticipation and the soft scent of old stone and candle wax. Marcus, Elena, Lila, and several other esteemed members, scholars, elders, and quiet dreamers alike, sat in a semicircle around a weathered oak table that had witnessed generations of whispered secrets. At the head of the table, Marcus gently ran his fingers over the relic's smooth surface. Even now, its inscriptions pulsed with an unsettling mix of familiar warmth and fleeting, mysterious violet glimmers. "We are here not to banish this emerging shadow," he began, his voice measured and earnest, "but to understand it. Every light casts a shadow, and sometimes the darkness speaks of truths we have yet to learn." Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on a faded manuscript spread open before her. Our ancestors recorded warnings in their lore, stories of a presence that arises when a community's healing remains incomplete. It may be that this shadow is a manifestation of what we have left unspoken, unresolved. Her tone was soft, yet every word carried the weight of years of quiet sorrow and hard-won wisdom. Lila, her youthful curiosity tempered by solemn responsibility, added, "I've been tracking the relic's changes. Its cadence shifts in tandem with the council's discussions. It's as if it listens and responds to our collective emotions." She paused, glancing at the others. "Perhaps we must share our most hidden memories, our unsung regrets, and unspoken fears to bring the shadow fully into the light." A hush fell over the room as one of the elder council members, a soft-spoken man named Arlen, slowly rose. "I recall a tale from my childhood," he said, voice trembling slightly with memory. "There was a time when our town was divided by grief, a secret betrayal that fractured our unity. Some believe that the lingering presence was born of that unresolved pain. Could it be that, even as we've healed many wounds, one crucial scar remains unaddressed?" The notion sent a ripple of thoughtful murmurs through the council. Papers rustled as others revisited long-buried records and diaries. One such document, yellowed with age and nearly lost to time, recounted a tragic misunderstanding between two families, a rift that was never mended and a sorrow that seeped into the very soil of the town. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes reflecting both empathy and resolve. "If that is the shadow we face, then our task is clear. We must confront that ancient wound head-on, not to reopen old scars, but to finally lay them to rest." His hand rested on the relic. Its glow deepened for a moment, a silent affirmation, perhaps. As the meeting continued, each member of the council offered memories long suppressed, accounts of broken bonds, of quiet betrayals, and of voices that were once silenced. The act of sharing was cathartic. With each revealed story, the relic's unsettling hues softened, its inscriptions growing steadier. In the gentle interplay between recollection and release, a new ray began to shimmer faintly upon the relic's surface, hovering between light and shadow. In truth, we are whole. The council watched in silent awe as the words glowed, a promise that by confronting and embracing every piece of their collective past, even the painful, forgotten parts, they could restore the full harmony of their legacy. That night, as the council dispersed with hearts lighter and minds clearer, the town itself seemed to exhale a long-held breath. Outside, under a canopy of starlight, the ancient oak whispered with quiet gratitude. The shadow that had once stirred unease was gradually transforming, its dark edges softening into the embrace of shared truth. Marcus, standing alone for a moment beneath the oak's sweeping branches, looked up at the relic through the chapel's open door. In its gentle radiance, he saw not only the reflection of a community bound by memory and hope, but also the promise of a future where every echo, no matter how faint, would be honored and healed. The council had set in motion a new chapter, a pledge to face the unspoken parts of their past and to weave them into the vibrant tapestry of their collective future. And as the night deepened into a serene silence, the relic pulsed with a quiet assurance. In the unison of shared truth, every shadow could be transformed into a beacon of wholeness. In the gentle aftermath of the council's revelations, a new stirring took root in the heart of the town, a call from the land itself. Whispers of an ancient spring, known among the elders as the healing waters, began to circulate. Said to lie deep within the forest, this sacred stream had once been a place where generations gathered to wash away their sorrows and renew their spirits. Now, it beckoned them once more. Marcus, Elena, Lila, and several council members resolved that the next step in their journey was to visit the healing waters. They believed that by confronting the source of the town's natural grace, they might finally integrate the last vestiges of their shadowed past and kindle a final, lasting peace. On a misty morning, as dew clung like tiny pearls to the forest leaves, the group set off along a winding, ancient path. The forest was alive with subtle sounds, the soft murmur of a breeze weaving through the branches, the distant call of a nightjar, and the quiet rustle of leaves underfoot. Every step seemed to echo with the memories of those who had trod the path before, as if the forest itself were a living repository of forgotten dreams. For hours they trekked, guided by the subtle luminescence of the relic, which Marcus carried in a small, intricately carved box at his side. Its glow pulsed in time with their quiet conversations and shared hopes, leading them through dappled sunlight and over gently trickling brooks. Along the way, the group paused to share small moments of recollection, fragments of personal histories intermingled with the collective story of the town. At last, they arrived at a secluded glade where the trees arched overhead to form a natural cathedral. In the center, a crystalline spring bubbled up from the earth, its waters clear and shimmering with an almost otherworldly radiance. Here, the air was cool, and the scent of wildflowers mingled with the earthy aroma of ancient soil. The glade felt timeless, as if it existed in a perpetual state of gentle renewal. Elena stepped forward first, her eyes misted with reverence. "This is the place," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the soft murmur of the water. "It has always been here, waiting for us to remember that healing is as natural as the flow of a river." Marcus nodded slowly, feeling the weight of years and memories lift from his shoulders with each ripple of the spring. "Our covenant taught us that every shadow carries a lesson," he said. "Perhaps here, at these healing waters, we can let go of the pain we've long held inside, and in doing so, find a new strength." One by one, the council members and townsfolk knelt at the water's edge. Lila, with quiet determination, dipped her fingers into the cool stream, watching as the water shimmered in response, its surface reflecting both the sky above and the deep, hidden recesses of their shared history. In that moment, the relic's inscription, once a solemn command, seemed to whisper in unison with the murmuring stream. "In truth, we are whole." As the group gathered in silent communion with the water, each person took a moment to share a memory they had long carried in solitude, a regret, a forgotten name, a grief that had once seemed insurmountable. Their voices, soft and trembling at first, gradually merged into a harmonious chant of release and renewal. The healing waters, aglow with the collective energy of their confession and forgiveness, began to ripple with a gentle, pulsing light. A profound stillness fell over the glade, punctuated only by the steady flow of water and the soft murmur of shared voices. In that sacred silence, the presence of the mysterious shadow, which had stirred unease in recent nights, seemed to dissolve into the embrace of nature. The healing waters, with their timeless grace, reminded everyone that every sorrow could be transmuted into hope if only one dared to face it. Marcus, standing at the center of the gathering, felt tears welling in his eyes as he looked around at the faces illuminated by the gentle glow. "We have come so far," he murmured, "and here, with these healing waters, we find that our journey is not defined by what we have lost, but by what we choose to embrace." His words, carried by the gentle breeze, filled the glade with a palpable sense of unity and peace. In that moment, beneath the watchful canopy of ancient trees and beside the ever-pure spring, the town took its next step toward wholeness. The healing waters had not only cleansed their bodies, but had also washed away the lingering shadows of forgotten pain, leaving behind the promise of a future where every memory, every echo, was a cherished part of their eternal tapestry. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden beams over the glade, the community gathered one last time at the water's edge, each soul united by the knowledge that in embracing their past, they had unlocked the true strength of their collective spirit. The healing had begun, and with it, the promise of a tomorrow where every heart beat in harmonious hope. In the days following the sacred ritual at the healing waters, a palpable transformation began to take root in the heart of the town. The gentle ripples of the spring had washed away old burdens, and, like the first tender shoots after a long winter, new hope emerged from the fertile soil of collective memory. Each morning, as the sun's soft light crept over the treetops, the townspeople gathered near the glade. They carried with them small tokens, a pressed wildflower, a carefully inscribed pebble, even a whispered promise that symbolized the lessons they had learned and the love they now nurtured for one another. These tokens were laid at the water's edge, forming a delicate mosaic of shared renewal, a living testament to the community's ongoing journey toward wholeness. Lila, now more assured in her role as keeper of the legacy, organized daily gatherings of the glade. With gentle guidance, she invited everyone, young and old, to share new stories that had blossomed from the healing ritual. Children giggled as they recounted the imaginative adventures sparked by the enchanted atmosphere, while elders spoke in soft, reflective tones of how the healing waters had not only cleansed their sorrows, but also kindled dreams long dormant. Marcus, whose life had been a winding tapestry of grief and redemption, often wandered to the glade at dawn. There, amidst the murmur of the stream and the rustle of awakening leaves, he would sit in quiet contemplation. In those tranquil moments, he recalled the arduous path that had led them to this point, a path marked by sacrifice, reconciliation, and the slow but sure growth of hope. His eyes, reflecting both the light of the new day and the wisdom of the past, filled with a serene determination. Their legacy was not a static relic of sorrow, but an ever-evolving garden, nourished by every remembered tear and every shared smile. Under the ancient oak, where the covenant had once been proclaimed and the relic had spoken its final, resonant words, the town began to celebrate small rituals of everyday renewal. Lanterns were hung along winding paths, each light a gentle promise that the darkness of the past could always be outshone by the brightness of togetherness. The air itself seemed to vibrate with quiet optimism, carrying the subtle scent of blooming wildflowers and freshly turned earth, a reminder that every ending births a new beginning. Elena, ever the quiet pillar of strength, organized workshops where residents could learn ancient crafts and forgotten songs passed down through generations. In these gatherings, laughter mingled with memory, and the community rediscovered the art of storytelling, a sacred practice that allowed both joy and sorrow to intertwine seamlessly. In each tale shared, the town found affirmation that healing was not about erasing the past, but about embracing every fragment of it as a seed for a brighter tomorrow. As the weeks turned into months, the healing waters became a symbol of the town's resilience, a sacred wellspring from which hope was continually drawn. Visitors from neighboring communities arrived, curious to witness this transformation, and in doing so, carried away a piece of the town's luminous spirit. The story of the relic, the covenant, and the healing ritual spread beyond the borders, inspiring others to seek out their own paths to renewal. One particularly radiant morning, as light poured over the glade in a cascade of gold and green, the council gathered for a final ritual to mark the season's renewal. Standing before the shimmering spring, Marcus addressed the assembly with a voice both soft and resolute. Today, we honor the seeds we have sown, each one a memory, a lesson, a promise for the future. Let our hearts remain open, and let every challenge we face serve as nourishment for the growth of our community. In unity, we turn every tear into water, every sorrow into soil, so that from our shared past, the most resilient blossoms of hope may arise. In that sacred moment, as the healing waters murmured a timeless lullaby and the ancient oak whispered secrets of enduring strength, the town embraced its future. They knew that while shadows might always linger at the edges, it was the light of shared memory and the quiet power of renewal that would guide them forward. And so, under the ever-watchful gaze of nature and the gentle glow of a community reborn, the seeds of renewal were planted, promising that as long as hearts remembered, every tomorrow would be a canvas upon which hope could be painted anew. As the gentle hum of renewed life continued to ripple through the town, a bold new project began to take shape, one that would symbolically unite the past with the future. In the heart of the community, plans were laid to construct a stone bridge over the winding creek that had long divided the old quarters from the blossoming new district. This bridge, conceived as both a literal and metaphorical link, would come to be known as the Bridge of Tomorrow. The idea was born during one of Lila's evening gatherings at the Glade, where voices had mingled like soft notes in a timeless melody. Inspired by the tales of old, where every challenge had been transformed into an opportunity for renewal, the townspeople decided that the bridge would stand as a testament to their collective journey. Its arches, carefully designed with symbols echoing the inscriptions on the relic, remember, embrace, and forgive, and the promise, beyond the shadows we rise, were to be carved with the names and stories of those who had shaped their legacy. In the weeks that followed, the entire town rallied behind the project. Artisans, engineers, and even children contributed their ideas. The elderly shared the forgotten details of ancient construction techniques, while the young brought vibrant visions of what a future built on unity could look like. Every stone laid, every arch completed, was accompanied by a quiet ceremony, a moment of remembrance and hope. Marcus, whose heart had once been heavy with grief, and who had borne witness to the relentless transformation of his community, walked daily along the proposed site. He saw in each rough-hewn stone the echoes of hardship and the promise of healing. Standing at the edge of the creek, he recalled the days when the town was shrouded in fog and sorrow, and marveled at how far they had come. Now, the soft murmur of water mingled with the sound of steady progress, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to say, "Together, we are building our future." Elena, ever the beacon of quiet strength, oversaw the gathering of stories to be etched into the bridge's surface. In her gentle, measured tone, she reminded everyone, every scar, every tear, and every forgotten name is part of our truth. This bridge will not only span the creek, but it will also bridge our hearts, uniting every memory with the promise of tomorrow. Her words resonated through the crisp morning air as artisans carefully inscribed names and symbols into the ancient stone. Lila, with her ever-curious spirit, documented each stage of the construction in her journal. She captured the laughter of children painting colorful motifs, the determined focus of craftsmen carving intricate patterns, and the quiet moments of reflection as elders recounted long-forgotten tales. Her writings wove these moments into a tapestry that celebrated both the arduous journey and the radiant hope that now defined the town. As the final stones were set in place and the bridge took on its majestic form, a grand unveiling was planned. The entire community gathered at dusk beneath the ancient oak, where the relic's gentle light still pulsed in the chapel. Lanterns, symbolic of each life touched by memory and hope, illuminated the square. A soft breeze carried murmurs of anticipation, and the bridge of tomorrow gleamed in the fading light, a testament to the power of unity. Marcus stepped forward, his voice both weathered and resolute. This bridge is more than stone and mortar. It is the living embodiment of our shared journey. It reminds us that every sorrow we have faced, every memory we have reclaimed, has built the foundation for our future. As we cross this bridge, we honor our past and embrace the endless possibilities of tomorrow. A hushed silence fell over the crowd before it erupted into heartfelt applause and quiet tears of joy. One by one, townspeople crossed the bridge, their steps symbolic of the leap from what had been to what could be. They traced the carved inscriptions with tender fingers, feeling the weight of each name and every story etched into the stone. Under the glow of lanterns and the watchful gaze of the ancient oak, the bridge of tomorrow stood as a beacon of transformation, a promise that even the deepest shadows could be transcended by the light of unity and remembrance. And as the night deepened into a gentle chorus of hope, the town knew that their journey was far from over. Every crossing of the bridge, every shared step into the future, was a renewal of their covenant, that together they would always rise, and that the legacy of their collective heart would shine eternal. In the soft aftermath of the grand unveiling of the bridge of tomorrow, the town found itself bathed in a renewed sense of purpose and quiet wonder. The bridge had become more than a structure of stone. It was a living symbol of the community's journey from shadow to light, a tangible reminder that every hardship had paved the way for hope. In the weeks that followed, life in the town blossomed in unexpected ways. Children, their laughter carrying across the freshly painted paths, played freely around the ancient oak and the newly built bridge. Their games became a joyful echo of stories once whispered in hushed tones, stories of resilience, remembrance, and the unyielding strength of unity. Every time they crossed the bridge, their small hands brushed against the carved names and symbols, absorbing the legacy of those who had come before. Marcus, now regarded as both a mentor and a gentle guardian of memory, often took quiet strolls along the creek that wound beneath the bridge. In the shimmer of morning light on the water, he recalled the long, winding path that had brought the town from its days of sorrow to this moment of shared triumph. His heart swelled with a quiet pride as he saw in the eyes of every neighbor, the elders, the young, and the hopeful, that the collective pain had given way to a future bright with promise. Elena, ever graceful and wise, continued to nurture the spirit of the community by leading gatherings beneath the ancient oak. In these moments of quiet reflection, she reminded everyone that the legacy of the past was not a burden, but a gift. Each memory, each forgotten name now reclaimed, was a thread in the tapestry of their collective soul. Our strength lies in our unity, she would say, her voice soft yet resolute. And in every heart that remembers, our history lives on. Lila, now emerging as a storyteller in her own right, compiled the ever-growing collection of memories into a new chronicle, one that blended the old with the new. Her journal, now filled with both sorrow and joy, served as an inspiration to those who wish to honor their heritage while embracing the future. In her writings, she painted vivid pictures of festivals, whispered legends, and the gentle pulse of the relic that had once guided them through darkness. As the seasons turned, the town continued to celebrate its evolution. The Bridge of Tomorrow became a gathering place for annual celebrations, a festival of lights and memory that brought together people from near and far. Lanterns floated on the creek, mirroring the stars above, while music and laughter intermingled with heartfelt remembrances. In those moments, the community was united in a shared vow to honor every step of their journey, to let every shadow be a lesson, and to always rise together toward the light. On a crisp evening beneath a velvet sky, the entire town convened one last time at the foot of the ancient oak. There, as the relic's soft glow mingled with the gentle flicker of candlelight, Marcus spoke with quiet conviction. We have built more than a bridge or a collection of memories. We have built a legacy of unity. Every tear shed, every name reclaimed, every story shared has led us to this moment. Let us carry this legacy forward. For as long as our hearts remember, our spirit will shine, unbroken and eternal. In that tender silence, punctuated by the rustle of leaves and the soft murmur of the night, the town understood that their journey was far from over. Their legacy was an ever-unfolding tapestry, woven with threads of hope, courage, and the enduring power of unity. And so, with hearts alight and hands joined in quiet celebration, they stepped confidently into the future, knowing that every memory, every voice, would forever be a part of the legacy of unity that defined their lives. As the town's legacy continued to unfold, a new sense of promise and possibility began to infuse every corner of the community. The relic's gentle glow, ever steady in the chapel, had become an enduring beacon, a symbol not only of what had been overcome, but of what was yet to come. Under the timeless gaze of the ancient oak and along the well-trodden paths of the Bridge of Tomorrow, life carried on in a vibrant tapestry woven with threads of memory, unity, and hope. In the quiet hours before dawn, Lila often wandered to the glade by the healing waters. There, she would sit in silent reflection, her journal open on her lap as she recorded the soft whispers of the stream and the murmur of the wind. Every ripple and rustle seemed to speak of lives intertwined and of dreams nurtured through shared resilience. Now more than ever, she understood that the true power of their legacy lay in its perpetual renewal, a flame that would be kindled by each generation and passed on like an eternal beacon. At community gatherings, new voices had begun to rise alongside those of the elders. Children recounted stories learned from playful reenactments of historic festivals, while teenagers, eager to shape the future, asked questions about the origins of their traditions and the meaning behind each inscription on the relic. In classrooms, local teachers wove the town's story into lessons of courage, compassion, and the transformative power of unity. The narrative of loss had long been rewritten into a celebration of life, a living testament that every shadow could give way to radiant light. Marcus, now a wise mentor whose once weary eyes shone with the glow of countless remembered mornings, continued his daily walks along the creek beneath the Bridge of Tomorrow. With every step, he recalled the arduous journey from darkness into unity, feeling gratitude for each tear that had seeded hope. Our past is our guide, he would murmur to himself, and every remembered sorrow fuels the light of our collective future. His words, carried on the breeze, were like a soft promise that their legacy would never fade. Elena, her spirit as steadfast as the ancient oak itself, organized regular storytelling circles beneath its sprawling branches. Here, the town's tapestry of memories was recounted with heartfelt laughter and gentle tears. Stories of Thomas's mischief, Samuel's quiet kindness, Olivia's bittersweet courage, and even the healing of old wounds were shared openly, each narrative a brushstroke in the ever-expanding mural of their shared existence. In those moments, the community felt not the weight of loss, but the warmth of belonging, a conviction that together they could face any storm. One radiant afternoon, as the sun poured golden light over the newly planted garden and the Bridge of Tomorrow gleamed in the distance, a moment of profound realization unfolded. Lila, while reviewing her latest journal entry, discovered that the relic's inscriptions had subtly shifted once more. Faint new symbols danced alongside the familiar phrases, symbols that hinted at future promises, undiscovered stories, and the unending potential for growth. With a smile of quiet wonder, she whispered, "The beacon continues to evolve. Our journey, our story, it is never truly complete." The town embraced this revelation as a call to nurture what they had built. Plans were set in motion to expand the modest museum where Marcus's journal and other relics of their past were preserved. New exhibits would celebrate not only the pain they had endured but the hope they had ignited, a living archive of resilience meant to inspire all who sought to understand the delicate balance of memory and renewal. As twilight descended over the community, the Bridge of Tomorrow became a gathering place once again. Lanterns floated gently on the creek, mirroring the countless stars above, and soft music mingled with the night air. Neighbors, friends, and families, both old and new, stood together on the bridge, hands linked, hearts united. In that luminous moment, every face shone with the knowledge that their legacy was an eternal flame, a beacon to guide them through all seasons of life. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of the ancient oak, with the relic pulsing as a steady heartbeat in the chapel, and with every memory and every hope interwoven into the fabric of their existence, the town stepped boldly into the future. The eternal beacon of their shared legacy promised that as long as they remembered, as long as they celebrated every shadow and every light, the journey would continue, ever unfolding, ever inspiring, and forever radiant.